Good morning. I'll invite the pastor to grace us with prayers this morning. Pastor Cheyenne O'Connor.
May I invite you to pray. O God, our help in ages past and our only hope for years to come. We have gathered here in this assembly to give you thanks and praise for your goodness, your blessing upon these islands, for health, security, and prosperity. We thank you, Lord, for the leaders that you have provided. Thank you, God, that these are men and women who still recognize you as your supreme God of the Cayman Islands. We thank you and ask your blessing on your daughter, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, on Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, on Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the members of the royal family. We ask your blessings today. We pray in a very special way for our governor as she continues to make her contribution to these islands, for the Honorable Premier, on whose shoulders the daily responsibility of these islands are rested. We ask that you bless him with the wisdom of Solomon and the meekness of Moses. We pray for the Honorable Speaker of the House, one whose faith is anchored in you. We pray, Lord, that you will instill in her an additional supply of tact and wisdom as she directs the affairs of this hall. We pray, O God, for the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, that you will charge him with the responsibility, that you'll give him strength and wisdom of Samson and courage of David, as he carried out his responsibility to ensure checks and balances in the procedures and policies of government. We pray, O God, for the members of the cabinet who will have to make decisions on a daily basis for the betterment of these islands. We ask, God, that you'll direct their thoughts and their processes, and may everything be done according to your will and your favor. We pray, God, for the ex officio member of this legislative assembly, that they will work together so that this body will be a united one for the good of the land. Finally, Lord, we give you thanks for the budget that will be presented today, and we have stopped by to ask your blessings on it, for we are reminded somewhere in your scripture that you are renowned for multiplying 5 loaves and 2 fishes to feed 5,000. Because you have done it before, we know you can do it again. So we ask your blessing upon the financial reserves that you have so provided for us. And may at the end, Lord, as it was in that story, those who gather the fragment may see an increase in our reserve. Thank you, God, for hearing our prayers. Bless our people and bless this land. We ask it in the name of the Father. We ask it in the name of the Son and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Let all God's people say, Amen.
Please be seated.
Cayman Island Proclamation 2 of 2016 by Her Excellency Helen Kilpatrick, Company of the Most Honorable Order of the Bath, Governor of the Cayman Islands. Whereas Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands provides that the sessions of the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands shall be held at such places and begin at such times as the Governor may from time to time by proclamation appoint. Now therefore I, Helen Kilpatrick, CB, Governor of the Cayman Islands, by virtue of the powers conferred upon me by the said Section 83(1) of the Constitution of the Cayman Islands, hereby proclaim that a session of the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands shall be held at the Legislative Assembly Building in Georgetown, in the island of Grand Cayman, beginning at 10 a.m. on Monday, 30th day of May, 2016. given under my hand and the public seal of the Cayman Islands at Georgetown in the island of Grand Cayman, this 23rd day of May, in the year of our Lord 2016, and the 65th year of the reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Administration of oaths and affirmations. Oath of affirmation and due execution by Dr. Dax Bastillo, the Honorable Acting Deputy Governor, responsible for the portfolio of the Civil Service, to be the temporary ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly.
I invite the Honorable Dr. Dax Bastillo, the Honorable Acting Deputy Governor, to approach the dais. Please stand.
I, Dax Krishna Basdeo, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. I, Dax Krishna Basdeo, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and the people of the Cayman Islands in the office of Member of the Legislative Assembly.
Honorable Dr. Dax Bastillo, it's indeed my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome you to this honorable chamber this morning. I now invite you to occupy your seat. Please be seated.
Reading by the Honorable Speaker of Messages and Announcements.
There are no readings for this morning.
Motion for the suspension of the House.
I invite the Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this Honorable House do rise to await the arrival of Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, to receive a gracious message from the throne.
The question is that this honorable House do rise to await the arrival of Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, to receive a gracious message from the throne. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The House is accordingly suspended. I would invite the Sergeant to invite Her Excellency into the chamber. Please rise.
Her Excellency the Governor, please rise.
morning. Honourable Speaker, Premier, Honourable Ministers, Leader of the Opposition, Members of the Legislative Assembly, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be with you in this Honourable House to outline the government plans for the 2016-17 budget year. I congratulate this government on its careful stewardship and adherence to the principles of good governance. Much has happened since I delivered my first throne speech in 2013. Since then, I have developed a strong affection for the people of the Cayman Islands. As you know, I hope to continue to serve as governor until September 2017. I look forward to what the next year holds. As I said in my first address, good governance, which I'm charged to promote, involves the careful and planned management of resources so that we all benefit in a sustainable way. This government has worked hard to achieve the goals it set out at the beginning of its term, to strengthen the economy, improve government finances, and enhance the lives of those who live on these islands. Because of this hard work and the initiatives set out in last year's throne speech are either underway or have been accomplished. In addition, with this budget, the government will have met all the targets required by the Public Management and Finance Law and the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility, and within the time span agreed with the United Kingdom government. This budget should, therefore, be the last that requires advanced approval from the United Kingdom. This achievement is the result of a disciplined approach to governance that has created a substantial surplus. It has helped boost business confidence and investment, and the surplus has allowed the government to reduce import duties and fees, as well as to continue addressing the problem of civil service pay stagnation. Individuals and businesses have felt the benefits of both this increased economic activity and of lower taxes across the economy. We have seen the average prices of goods fall, helped by the reductions in import duty on most goods. Electricity costs are also lower because of falling oil prices, but also because of the lowering of import duty on the diesel used to generate electricity. Importantly, because of the growing economy, employment, particularly of Caymanians, has improved significantly. The past year has seen the best employment figures since 2007. To help Caymanians who have challenges getting and keeping employment, the government has collaborated with the private sector in the Ready to Work programme. This important initiative seeks to give individuals the dignity of work, as well as to provide economic benefits for employees and employers. The government is also continuing major capital works, which will enhance air and cruise tourism, modernise the waste management system, improve roads, and revitalise Georgetown. Work has begun on a new boardwalk and park in South Sound, and other new public parks are expected to be completed in the coming year. Work will also continue to make a long-term residential mental health facility for Caymanians a reality. The National Solid Waste Management Strategy has been finalised, and work is progressing on the integrated solid waste management system. The government will be making announcements about recycling and removal of old tyres at the landfill soon. The government maintains a strong and clear determination to meet international standards across its wide range of operations. I refer not only to regulation of the Cayman Islands international financial services sector, but also to procurement standards, gender equality, and to improvements to intellectual property and copyright laws. All of these matter to Cayman's economy and to providing for a fairer society for all. The introduction of a national minimum wage just 2 months ago, along with pending amendments to the labour law, will contribute to this aim. The government's commitment to international standards was evident from the Cayman Islands' participation at the recent anti-corruption summit in London. At the summit, the government stated, and the UK government agreed, that the Cayman Islands has proven its commitment to transparency and should have a seat at the table when decisions are made. The relationship between the United Kingdom and the Cayman Islands governments remains strong, and both are committed to working together for the good of the global economy. In addition to new initiatives around beneficial ownership, the Ministry of Financial Services is preparing for several important international assessments in the year ahead. The Ministry is also prioritising enhancements to mechanisms for the exchange of beneficial ownership information ahead of the June 2017 deadline agreed with the UK. And the government will also enact and amend legislation dealing with financial services and data protection. Importantly, the Ministry of Financial Services and the financial services industry continue to maintain a high level of cooperation and partnership. To highlight this, Cayman Finance supported the government position and assisted the government's efforts at the conference in London. The public sector is committed to providing a level of services is on a par with competing jurisdictions. The Deputy Governor is leading on the professionalism and effectiveness of the civil service. The first item from the Project Future programme that the Cabinet has approved is the creation of the Office of the Ombudsman. This combines the functions of the Complaints and Information Commissions, as well as the new Police Complaints Commission. And this should be in place by the end of this calendar year. Other projects are in development, and the government will speak to these in due course. In addition, the Public Authorities Bill will be introduced in the 2016 fiscal year and will aim to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of the public sector more widely. To facilitate a more modern approach to doing business, the Cabinet Office will coordinate public sector efforts to make improvements in cybersecurity and strategic communications. There will be continued focus on the use of technology to deliver and improve services. The government knows that innovation is necessary to ensure a vibrant public sector, as well as a thriving and sustainable economy. It continues to encourage and support business of all sizes. Economic sustainability is, of course, a particular concern to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. The Ministry of District Administration has plans for projects that will meet its goal of job creation. The Ministry of Finance, meanwhile, is working to develop tools that will provide a more up-to-date and detailed information about all areas of our economy. This kind of evidence-based decision-making will be a model for the public sector. The Ministry of Health will continue its efforts to eradicate the Aedes aegypti mosquito and thus help keep residents safe from harmful mosquito-borne illnesses such as the Zika virus. This September, the Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs will launch a second action plan focusing on targets for improvement in schools. Labour and pensions legislative reform will clarify the law and increase compliance. The government is also working to improve the care for those most in need through better social policy programmes and services. Work will continue on improvements to school infrastructure. In addition to introducing a national policy for older people, the Ministry of Community Affairs will streamline the processing of applications from those most in need. Caymanians and residents of all ages rightly place great importance on personal security. I will be asking the new Commissioner of Police to review the operations of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service and to put forward recommendations for improvement. In addition, the Ministry of Home Affairs will develop interdisciplinary approaches to crime reduction and to child protection between the agencies responsible for criminal justice, public safety and national security. Capacity building, standard setting, and, as elsewhere, the use of technology will be prioritised. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions will upgrade its electronic case management system in order to collect performance data more reliably and improve the link between the police and courts. The Judicial Department will introduce mediation for family proceedings in both the Grand and Summary Courts to help parties reach settlements and avoid protracted legal proceedings. We will also see change in the introduction of the new electoral system. The civil service will ensure that the electorate is educated about the new system, as well as ensuring that everything goes smoothly on election day. Ladies and gentlemen, while the agenda that I have outlined today highlights the plans for the current political administration over the coming year, the civil service, oversight bodies, private sector, and civil society all play important roles in supporting our thriving democracy. As we address the demands of today, we must also consider the new opportunities and challenges of the future and follow a course that will benefit future generations. It will be important that all of us who are lucky enough to call the Cayman Islands home work together to deliver a strong, safe and stable environment for everyone to enjoy. Thank you for your attention.
I think out of an abundance of caution, we can sit right
Please be seated. I now call the House to order. I recognize the Father of the House for the motion of thanks to Her Excellency the Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The motion be resolved that this Honorable Legislative Assembly records its grateful thanks to Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, for the address delivered at this sitting. But I do regret that the opposition had to pass out copies to themselves.
Not part of the motion is the regret. The motion therefore reads, be it therefore resolved that this Honourable Legislative Assembly record its grateful thanks to Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, for the address delivered at this sitting. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no.
No.
I believe the ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Motion to defer debate of the throne speech.
I recognise the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that the debate on the address delivered by Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, be deferred until Wednesday, 1st of June, 2016.
The question is, be it resolved that the debate on the address delivered by Her Excellency the Governor, Mrs. Helen Marjorie Kilpatrick, CB, be deferred until Wednesday, the 1st day of June, 2016. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Presentation of paper and of reports. The annual plan and estimates for the government of the Cayman Islands for the financial year ending 31st of December 2017, together with the annual budget statements for ministries and portfolios for the financial year ending 31st of December 2017, purchase agreements for statutory authorities, government companies, and non-governmental output suppliers for the year ended 30th of June 2017. And the ownership agreement for statutory authorities and government companies for the year ended 31st of December 2017, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Marco Archer, Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
I recognise the Honourable Minister responsible for Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the following documents with respect to the government's financial period that will end on the 31st of December 2017. Plan and estimates for the government of the Cayman Islands. Budget statement for ministries, portfolios, and offices. Purchase agreements for statutory authorities, government companies, and non-government output suppliers. And ownership agreements for statutory authorities and government companies. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So ordered. Does the Honourable Minister for Finance and Economic Development wish to speak to the report?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when you invite me to speak to the second reading of the appropriation bill, I will make my comments at that time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Statements by Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet.
There are no statements down for this morning. I recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the privilege of delivering the government's budget policy statement. Madam Speaker, I deliver this final budget policy statement of this term with a sense of fulfillment and pride that this government has done what we were mandated to do in the 2013 elections: return stability to the country and its economy, stabilize government finances, restore the good name of the Cayman Islands, both here at home and internationally, and improve employment opportunities for our people. This is a remarkable achievement in just 3 years, and one of which the entire Cayman Islands can be justly proud. To quote Winston Churchill, "The truth is incontrovertible. Malice may attack it, ignorance may deride it, but in the end, there it is." The budget that will be delivered today highlights this truth. It also highlights a determination by us to continue the program of positive change we began in 2013, and doing so with the same determination that has characterized the spirit of getting things done that we have shown over these past 3 years. Today, the economy is moving again. People are investing in Cayman again. Businesses are growing again. Caymanians are finding work again. Government finances are back on track again. And tax cuts are benefiting everyone. The work is not over by any means, and there is still much to be done. But without question, Cayman is in a much better position now than when we assumed office 3 years ago. We have restored confidence in the government, and by so doing, we have the confidence of our people, of investors, and of the United Kingdom government. We have succeeded in doing so through methodical and careful planning and disciplined execution. As a result, Madam Speaker, I am pleased to be able to report to this Honourable House and the entire country that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office has approved the 2016-2017 budget quickly and on the first submission. This has been the case for each and every budget this administration has delivered. To all involved, I say congratulations and well done. Madam Speaker, please allow me to read the letter from the United Kingdom's Overseas Territories Minister, James Duddridge, congratulating us on this newest budget. It reads, Madam Speaker, "Dear Premier, thank you for your letter dated 18th of May, outlining the Cayman Islands 2016-2017 budget revenue and expenditure levels. Firstly, I would like to congratulate you on the success of the 2015-2016 budget, which will now bring the Cayman Islands into full compliance with the agreed limits as defined in the framework for fiscal responsibility. This step you have taken to manage the public finances is important for securing sustainable economic growth for the Cayman Islands. I was also pleased to see that you have presented another strong budget for 2016-2017, consistent with the forecast set out in the strategic policy statement. I note this budget will be 18 months long in order to transition to calendar year budgets in the future. My officials inform me your decision in part reflects the advantage of having a more informed view of the revenue position at the start of the year in order to manage the budget more effectively. Finally, thank you as always for continuing to work closely with my officials in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. I value the close partnership between our governments and look forward to maintaining this in the future." And it is signed, Madam Speaker, James Duddridge, MP, Minister for Africa, the Overseas Territories, and the Caribbean. And Madam Speaker, with your permission, I would lay a copy on the table of this Honourable House, and I have a copy for yourself and for all members, Madam Speaker.
Permission granted.
Madam Speaker, before I get too far along in my presentation, I wish to thank Her Excellency for presenting the throne speech and for her wise counsel and continued support of the government. We have an excellent working relationship, and I was pleased to learn that she will be staying through the balance of this term and beyond. I also wish to thank the Minister of Finance and Economic Development and his entire team for their tireless efforts in preparing the 2016-2017 budget, which he will present shortly. When he does, Madam Speaker, this House will appreciate that this budget continues what has been a hallmark of this administration: a prudent and pragmatic approach to spending and minding of the public purse. Indeed, the Minister of Finance will again present a budget for economic growth, for jobs, and prosperity. A budget that continues this administration's commitment to no new borrowings and no new taxes. A budget that continues the tax concessions previously granted by this administration. A budget that benefits families and businesses. A budget that shores up government cash reserves and repays debt. A budget that continues to fulfill the ambitious plans we set out for ourselves 3 years ago. Plans to stabilize government finances, restore confidence in Cayman and in the government, strengthen the economy, and improve employment and economic opportunities for our people. The latter goal that speaks to opportunities for our people is not an add-on. It is the primary reason we do all the other things. Indeed, Madam Speaker, each of these goals is important and interlinked. Prudent money management, coupled with honest and transparent government and honest procurement systems, give investors confidence in government and the country. And investor confidence is central to any plans to grow the economy. Investors, including Caymanian investors, who are confident that their investments in the Cayman Islands are safe, start businesses here, develop properties here, and import products and equipment. Madam Speaker, they attract tourists and international financial services business and provide employment for our people. The economic activities they create benefit Caymanian businesses and the people they employ. And this economic activity also provides the fees and import duties that government relies on for revenue. Solid government revenues, coupled with sensible money management, create useful surpluses. Surpluses that can be used to pay for government services, to top up cash reserves and save for rainy days, to repay debt and provide benefits for people, such as education, healthcare, and policing, as well as to build infrastructure such as roads, docks, hospitals, airports, schools, and waste management plants. Surpluses also allow for tax reductions that put money back into the pockets of families and businesses. Money that may help a family to save for a home or a business to afford a new delivery van. And as government finances and the economy continue to improve, this encourages even more investment in Cayman. The virtuous cycle continues, bringing even more economic and employment opportunities for our people. Madam Speaker, this is not rocket science, but it does take ability, discipline, credibility, integrity, and loads of hard work. These are qualities for which this government has become known, and which is why we are, as the Deputy Premier likes to say, a government that gets things done. Let us reflect, Madam Speaker, on what this government is getting done. The restoration of government finances. When the Minister of Finance speaks, he will address this at length and will point out that we have met all the targets needed to bring us back into full compliance with the requirements of the Public Management and Finance Law. He will also show that we have maintained firm control over expenditures and have delivered strong revenues and surpluses. He will highlight that this administration continues to operate from cash rather than an overdraft, and that this is a budget that continues to reduce debt and to make provision for matters like government's past service liability to pensioners. This has not happened by chance, but is the direct result of this administration's sound planning and disciplined implementation of those plans. We were determined to deliver and keep our promises to bring government finances back under control. Madam Speaker, we understand that a government with the discipline to use its available funding wisely is a government that does not overtax its people. And this government has used the people's money wisely. Over the last 3 budgets, we have generated net surpluses totaling almost $400 million. We did this despite giving up about $30 million annually in tax reductions and correcting inequalities in civil servants' salaries. Effectively, this represents a $30 million annual economic stimulus. By comparison, the UDP's last 3 budgets created net surpluses totaling only $41 million. And Madam Speaker, so how are we using these surpluses? In a number of ways, including returning cash reserves to the levels required by the Public Management and Finance Law. We're also using surpluses to repay government debt. Over the past 3 years, surpluses have given us the ability to pay down debt by $71 million. As the Minister of Finance will no doubt mention, the current budget will have sufficient surpluses to reduce the debt burden even further. And we have set aside $17 million in a debt service sinking fund, which can be used to repay debt in future years as needed. Paying down debt, as we have done, reduces the burden of financing costs to government and also frees up funds for other uses, such as improving education, funding the cost of a proper waste management system, or providing needed infrastructure. Surpluses also allowed us to lower taxes over the past 2 budgets, thus reducing the cost of living. The duty paid by licensed traders was reduced from 22% to 20% during the last budget. This cost government $4 million per annum in lost revenues, but also reduced the import duty cost to businesses and allowed them the ability to provide better pricing to local customers, helping to reduce the cost of living to households and businesses. Duty on fuel used by Caribbean Utilities Company to produce electricity was also reduced under this administration from a high of 75 cents per gallon to 25 cents per gallon. This costs government some $17 million annually in foregone revenue, but represents money that will be retained by families and businesses. And these reduced costs will continue to benefit families and businesses regardless of what happens to the price of diesel in the future. To assist micro businesses and entrepreneurship, fees were reduced or waived at a cost to the government of $1 million a year annually. This has allowed new businesses to start up and others to become qualified to bid for government contracts. These concessions have been successful, and we have seen the number of small business applications dramatically increase over the past year. Surpluses have also been used to bolster our cash reserves. For 2015-2016, there is sufficient cash in reserves to fund more than the required 90 days required by the Public Management and Finance Law. And because we have had good surpluses, during the last year's budget, we were able to announce an across-the-board cost of living increase of 4% for civil servants that became effective July 1st, 2015. The cost of this was about $7.5 million per annum, but represents money that is spent here at home and put right back into this economy. This was in addition to a 2.5% gratuity payment provided to civil servants in June 2014 in recognition of the hard work done to help improve government efficiencies. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to be able to announce that given the continual improved performance of the budget over this past year, government will this year pay a one-time gratuity of 2.2% of annual salary to all civil servants. This will be paid with June salaries and amounts to about $3.7 million, which will be paid from the 2015-2016 surplus. It therefore will not impact expenditure in the upcoming budget. Again, Madam Speaker, this is to recognize the valuable contributions that civil servants have made over the past year. And as we announced during the strategic policy statement delivered in November, Madam Speaker, government will also start to address pay stagnation for some of our longest-serving employees by making provision in the upcoming budget. Some of these hardworking and dedicated staff have had their salaries frozen for as long as 7 years, and yet they see new entrants to the service being able to negotiate higher salaries when they are employed. We will begin the work to correct this in the 2016-2017 budget. Madam Speaker, as I have noted before, the surpluses are a consequence of both prudent financial management and sound policies by this administration, as well as the recovery of the global and local economies. Cayman's economy is continuing to expand with economic growth of about 2% annually since 2013, far exceeding the 0.81% economic growth experienced during the first 3 years of the UDP's administration. So yes, Madam Speaker, since we took office, there has been a tremendous economic boost. Today, we have an economy buoyed by increased investor confidence, where private sector investment is growing and is set to grow further with major initiatives that are underway or in the planning stages. The Kimpton's Seafire Hotel on 7 Mile Beach is expected to open in November. The plans for the upcoming development of Ironwood, where golf legend Arnold Palmer will design and build a golf course, are currently with the Central Planning Authority. Approval is expected soon. Camana Bay continues to expand. The old Hyatt Hotel site is being redeveloped. Treasure Island is being refitted as a Margaritaville resort, and things are progressing for a resort at Beach Bay in the district of Bordentown. Madam Speaker, the developments I mentioned are just part of the 1,269 applications the Department of Planning has received since the 1st of May 2015. So far, 934 of those applications have been approved with an estimated project value of $451 million. Applications pending carry an estimated project value of $300 million. Tourist arrivals by air are at record numbers, with about 383,000 visitors arriving in 2014 and 385,000 in 2015. These are the highest arrivals by air in more than 2 decades. And so far, this year's arrivals are doing very well, with some 113,000 visitors in the first quarter of this year. Cruise arrivals also tell a good story, with about 1.61 million cruise visitors in 2014 and 1.72 million in 2015. These are the best cruise arrival numbers we have seen since 2006, pardon me, Madam Speaker. The cruise numbers for 2016 are off to a good start, with 612,000 arrivals in the first quarter. This is up by 68,000 visitors compared to the first quarter of 2015. This hasn't happened by accident, Madam Speaker. It is a result of sound policy measures and of this government rolling up its sleeves and showing a willingness to work with our industry partners and the private sector. Very early in our term, the Minister of Tourism, the Deputy Premier, met with the cruise industry to seek to persuade them to include Grand Cayman in more of their itineraries. The aim was to get more ships arriving here. When we took office, tour and taxi operators, as well as business owners, were crying out because of reducing numbers of cruise visitors. Our efforts have been successful, and the cruise tourism numbers have been on the upswing. Similarly, we worked with local tourism partners in an effort to encourage increasing air arrivals during the slower tourist season. I'm sure the Deputy Premier and Tourism Minister will speak more on this during his contribution to the debate. To accommodate increasing air arrivals, we have pushed the redevelopment of the Owen Roberts International Airport. The first phase of this project, involving the construction of a new baggage hall and related amenities, is almost complete. This past week, we signed a $42.5 million contract with McAlpine to build the second phase of the Owen Roberts International Airport arrival and departure areas. This project is expected to create about 100 new construction jobs, and groundbreaking will be in just a few weeks. The entire airport redevelopment is expected to cost approximately $60 million. It is being built without any borrowing and is expected to be completed by mid-2018. When opened, the redeveloped airport will be capable of accommodating the throughput of 2.5 million visitors a year, almost much more, Madam Speaker, than the optimum volume of the current airport, which is a mere 500,000. Cayman Airways has also launched a modernization plan to replace its aging fleet of jets with 4 new state-of-the-art aircraft over the next 4 years, with the first new jet arriving later this year. The airline has been able to negotiate for competitive lease pricing for the new aircraft, and no government guarantee will be required to secure these new planes. The airline will get the benefit of newer aircraft with lower maintenance costs and increased seating and cargo capacity. It is a win-win situation. Madam Speaker, this government promised in our manifesto to ensure that airlift from our source market stays in step with demand. This government is delivering on our promise. A modern and efficient fleet of planes for Cayman Airways will benefit both residents and locals, as well as improve the image of the flag carrier of these islands. Dialogue between government and the tourism sector will continue to ensure that our own Caymanian people are trained for and get the tourism-related jobs that are available to them. Another promise we are delivering upon. To this end, Madam Speaker, it was this government that helped institute the Hospitality Training School, which had been talked about by the previous administration. It took this government to get the job done. We are proud of the school and the achievements of its graduates. We are also making headway on a cruise berthing facility and an expanded cargo port. The assessment on how best to minimize any potential environmental damage is ongoing. It is planned to move the cruise pairs into deeper water, which will doubtless drive up the cost of the project, but will provide greater protection of the nearshore marine environment. This next step, which will include civil engineering design works and full costing, represents significant progress and is needed for the financing model for this project. We will continue to grow our tourism business for both cruise and stayover visitors within our targeted market segment. Again, the Deputy Premier and Minister for Tourism will speak more to this when he rises to make his contribution. While I'm on the subject of tourism, Madam Speaker, I want to highlight the Cayman International Film Festival, which will draw film stars and film industry professionals to our shores from the 1st to the 4th of July. Included in that mix will be Anthony Daniels, better known as C-3PO from Star Wars, who will be arriving having just completed the wrap-up of the newest Star Wars Episode 8. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, we welcome home our own son of the soil, Frank E. Flowers, who is bringing back to the islands the cast and crew of his debut feature film, Haven. I am happy to see that this annual film festival continues to grow from strength to strength and to encourage a community of young local artists who are taking Cayman movie making to the next level. As this film festival grows, it will not only bring in more tourists, but will serve as an incubator for a niche film sector that could help diversify our economy and create opportunities for Cayman. We will continue to work with the private sector to enhance Cayman's offerings. Private sector businesses, Madam Speaker, like the DART organization, which earlier this year announced plans to build another resort, which when complete will create unique experiences for not only tourists, but also residents. And speaking of DART, Madam Speaker, early on in our term, we engaged with the DART organization to renegotiate what is known as the DART and NRA agreement. There were aspects of the UDP negotiated agreement that in our view were not good for Cayman. It has been a long journey, but I'm happy to announce that the third amendment to the DART NRA agreement has now been executed. It commits DART to certain levels of development sooner rather than later, including the completion of needed enhanced road networks. Some of that work is already underway in the form of the ongoing expansion of lanes on the Estella Tibbetts Highway. Government is partnering with DART to construct a further 2 lanes of the Estella Tibbetts Highway from the roundabout at Galleria south to the Butterfield roundabout near A.L. Thompson's Home Depot. The NRA third amendment also removes the concessions on tourism room tax, which had been given away by the UDP administration. This amended agreement is good for Cayman. The new terms will guarantee construction jobs once the Kimpton is complete, jobs working on the roadways that DART will build, and jobs that will come once DART starts to build out Camana Bay as well as new resorts. And local business will also benefit from this increased economic activity. Local contractors, trucking companies, and heavy equipment operators will have business. And of course, once the developments are complete, the businesses will provide employment. And this economic activity will also bring in revenue to government that will benefit all of Cayman. Madam Speaker, these developments, along with government works on key infrastructure projects like the airport and roadworks, have created jobs for Caymanians. In the strengthened economy under this administration, unemployment for Caymanians, which peaked at 10.5% in 2010, has decreased to 6.3%, the lowest Caymanian unemployment rate since 2007. And as the economy continues to expand and more businesses of all sizes open their doors and create jobs, Caymanian unemployment will continue to improve. Caymanian employment will continue to improve. In terms of the cost of living, the Consumer Price Index has been falling consistently. The most recent survey indicates that it has fallen again by 2.8% in March this year compared to March 2015. Undoubtedly, lower oil prices are helping drive this, but decreases have been aided by the reductions in import duty on consumable goods and on the diesel used by Caribbean Utilities Company to generate electricity. The fuel duty decrease has also helped lower the cost of desalinated water. Consumers would have seen their utility rates falling since last year. Madam Speaker, we have been able to provide these cost reductions because we continue to present sensible, realistic budgets with sound financial projections that underpin good policies. The 2016-2017 budget continues this trend, but is for a period of 18 months rather than the customary 12-month cycle. In this respect, this is a first for our country. It sets in motion this government's plans to move towards two-year budgets, which will make the budget process more efficient, saving thousands of hours annually in budget preparation by civil servants and ministers. It will also enable better strategic planning for the physical and socio-economic development of these islands for the benefit of both ordinary people and businesses. It will give both households and businesses the ability to plan their affairs with greater certainty in accordance with government's fiscal and social policies. This change will move the budget year end to December. With May elections, this allows 6 months after an election for incoming governments to prepare new budgets with their priorities in mind. It avoids the current mad scramble to get a temporary budget in place in just a few weeks following the swearing in. Since the greatest percentage of government revenue is received in the first quarter of the year, it will also provide the advantage of having a more informed view of the revenue position at the start of the year, allowing better management of the budget. The Minister of Finance will provide more detail when he presents the actual budget. Madam Speaker, this budget, like all of our past budgets, does not focus on numbers for the sake of numbers. Rather, the numbers reflect this government's policies aimed at continued sound financial management, creating solid economic growth, and further improving opportunities for Caymanians. This budget also continues our promise of no new taxes, with tax concessions continuing to help hold down the cost of living and to leave money in the pockets of families. It is a budget that supports business and assures a prosperous future for Cayman and her people. A prosperous future for islands will depend on maintaining a robust and diverse business sector that includes tourism and financial services. While we still depend on our two main economic pillars, we know that for this country to continue to prosper, we need other economic drivers to help ensure we maintain a robust and sustainable economy. So we are helping small businesses develop, and they are reporting good growth and confidence in this government. We also work constantly to encourage burgeoning business sectors such as medical tourism, sports tourism, and attracting tech and other niche business sectors to Cayman. This administration has worked closely with Cayman Enterprise City to help ensure the growth of businesses within the Special Economic Zone. In addition, we work with them to promote Cayman. An example of this was my attendance at an Internet Marketing Association conference in Las Vegas in 2014. This has led to that association holding a mini conference here in early 2015 and a very successful larger conference earlier this year. This brought to Cayman leaders from large tech companies such as Google, Microsoft, and Evite. This partnership should bear good fruit in the years to come, as the IMA intends to host these conferences in Cayman on an annual basis, where leaders in tech businesses will be exposed to the Cayman Islands and see the benefits of doing business here. I can also add, Madam Speaker, that the IMA itself has set up in the Special Economic Zone further showing its confidence in Cayman, which undoubtedly will give its member businesses the confidence to do the same, where a Cayman entity makes sense to their business plans. We also renegotiated the Special Economic Zone Agreement with Cayman Enterprise City to allow for certain types of tech companies to enter Cayman without the need to use the zone. But as a trade-off, we also allowed the zone to expand to other areas, such as a maritime park. This already appears to be paying dividends, as the recently held Cayman Islands Shipping Summit is a positive sign that we may be able to expand the types of business we do in the maritime sector. Health City is also continuing to grow and expand its reputation as a world-class medical facility. And the value of this facility to local healthcare has proven itself over and over. This venture, Madam Speaker, is one that the members of this government supported from the inception. Our support continues. Government also remains committed to keeping up to date our legislative and regulatory framework to ensure we maintain our enviable spot in the global economy. We made a promise to nurture our financial services industry, attract new business, and encourage more financial service providers to set up shop in Cayman. We are delivering on our promise. We have consistently worked with the industry to create or amend legislation regarding financial services products. For example, last August, this Honorable House approved amendments to the Mutual Funds Law and the Securities Investment Business Law, which aim to assist the Cayman Islands in qualifying for what's called the Third Country Passport under the European Union Directive. The passport allows Cayman funds to be marketed to professional investors across the European Union rather than through private placement in each EU member state individually. Additionally, the Limited Liability Company Law 2015 was unanimously passed to provide for the formation of a new type of business vehicle that is a hybrid between a company and a partnership. We created the law in conjunction with the private sector, and we are confident its passage will generate new business, keeping Cayman at the forefront of offshore services. We've also proved our willingness and ability to fight on the international stage to defend Cayman's business model and reputation. Whether at Chatham House in London, on BBC's Hard Talk, in Brussels, where the Minister of Financial Services recently faced down a room full of hostile members of the European Parliament, or more recently at the Anti-Corruption Summit in London. We will go where we need to go to fight our case. But much of the defending, negotiating, and arguing our case occurs outside of the public eye. When necessary, we remind those on the other side of the table that we will not roll over, and we will defend ourselves at all costs, even going to the courts if necessary. Madam Speaker, there are those who believe that it is better to shout and stomp your feet and threaten. Despite these tactics failing, they still refuse to accept that firm diplomacy beats idle threats and useless noise. We prefer firm diplomacy. Successful negotiations with the United Kingdom on beneficial ownership and the positive outcome at the Anti-Corruption Summit help prove our point. Madam Speaker, the letter of 10th May 2016 from the UK Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, speaks volumes. And Madam Speaker, with your permission, I would wish to read that letter and to lay a copy on the table of the House and provide copies to yourself and members.
So ordered.
Madam Speaker, the letter is addressed to the Minister of Financial Services, the Honorable Wayne Panton. It reads, "Thank you for your letter of 6th May, setting out the Cayman Islands' commitment to the recently launched initiative for the development and subsequent implementation of a new global standard for the exchange of beneficial ownership information. I very much welcome your joining this initiative at this early stage. As you say, exchange of such information on a global basis will make a marked difference to the ability of law enforcement authorities to tackle the abuse of corporate structures and other arrangements as a cloak to criminal activities, including money laundering, illicit finance, and tax evasion. Cayman has taken a lead on global transparency as a cooperative jurisdiction, including through your early commitment to the Common Reporting Standard, your joining of the Multilateral Convention, and the important role that you have played and continue to play in the Global Forum for Tax Transparency. This has been influential in helping achieve rapid global uptake to these standards and a step change in global tax transparency. I have asked my officials to ensure that arrangements are put in place so that the Cayman Islands, along with other committed jurisdictions, will be able to participate in discussions as the global standard is developed. It will be important, as you say, to ensure that the new standard respects the confidentiality and security of data and that appropriate legal gateways are in place. I also very much agree with your comments about the importance of a level playing field and hope that we can work together to convince all countries and jurisdictions to join this important initiative. I hope that your Premier will be able to attend the Anti-Corruption Summit in London on 12th May, which will provide an opportunity to set out how this initiative, together with the Common Reporting Standard and other enhancements to global transparency arrangements, will make a real difference in tackling crime and corruption. Yours, George Osborne, Chancellor of the Exchequer. Madam Speaker, this, coupled with Prime Minister Cameron's defense of the overseas territories and crown dependencies, represents an extraordinary shift in the conversation. Under this government, Cayman is in the best position it has ever been in dealing with these matters. I give this House and this country the assurance that we will be confident and we will be bold in the defense of our interests, but we will not be reckless. This government is also creating new opportunities for the growth of the financial services industry through the ongoing modernization of our intellectual property regime. Immediate focus is on trademark reform and the implementation of new copyright protection locally. Madam Speaker, preparations for international assessments are of critical importance in the 2016-2017 budget. The first is an effectiveness assessment under the Financial Action Task Force standards, which will focus on the anti-money laundering and counter-financing of terrorism regime of the jurisdiction. Next comes an assessment of the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority conducted by the International Monetary Fund. The third is an assessment of the Cayman Islands under the International Maritime Organization Instruments Implementation Code. This assessment will focus on port and coastal state responsibilities and a broader requirement for government to develop and maintain a clear strategy to achieve, maintain, and improve overall organizational performance and capability as a flag port and coastal state. Enhancements to mechanisms to exchange beneficial ownership information will also be of significance, especially with the June 2017 deadline to implement a centralized platform as agreed with the United Kingdom. We have confirmed to the United Kingdom that Cayman will join the initiative for the development of a global standard for the sharing of beneficial ownership. I wish to be clear, Madam Speaker, that this government has signed no agreement for the automatic sharing of beneficial ownership information. What we have done, as the letters by the Minister of Financial Services and the response by Chancellor Osborne plainly indicate, is to agree to participate in discussions regarding the development of a new global standard. As is indicated in Mr. Osborne's letter, the Cayman Islands will have a seat at the table as these standards are developed. Other measures, Madam Speaker, that we are taking include the repeal by this September of the Confidential Relationships Preservation Law, which often has been misrepresented as Cayman's secrecy law. It will be replaced with the Confidential Information Disclosure Law, which will better clarify the mechanisms through which confidential information may be shared with appropriate authorities. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, acknowledging privacy as a basic human right, in September, this government will introduce new data protection legislation that is on par with what is in place in the European Union. While bearer shares in the Cayman Islands have been immobilized since April 2000, Cayman recently passed legislation to completely abolish bearer shares by 13th of July this year. Madam Speaker, the portfolio of legal affairs will continue to partner with the Minister of Financial Services and other relevant government departments and agencies to prepare the jurisdiction for the fourth round of mutual evaluations scheduled for the second quarter of 2017. In this regard, there will be strategic focus on key legislative changes and the creation of the necessary administrative framework to achieve the desired results. The key legislative changes include, but are not limited to, the enactment of a new nonprofit organizations law and amendments to the Proceeds of Crime law, the Money Laundering Regulations 2015 revision, the terrorism law, the Proliferation Financing Prohibition law, and the Monetary Authority law. Madam Speaker, this government has not only been legislatively and fiscally responsible, successful in stimulating the economy and creating greater economic and employment opportunities for people, but we have also practiced and not just talked about good governance. We have demonstrated our commitment to good governance, not just with the way we operate the business of government, but in more tangible ways, such as the passage of the Standards in Public Life Law in 2014. We've also made further amendments this year to improve the operations of the anti-corruption law. Madam Speaker, good governance is also about the efficiency and effectiveness of the public service. That is why we have initiated Project Future. In November last year, government unveiled 51 projects selected by Cabinet to take forward as part of the 5-year Project Future initiative. As I said at the launch of Project Future, it establishes a comprehensive and far-reaching program of public sector reform that will drive efficiency and improve the effectiveness of public services. Madam Speaker, I will make a separate statement on the status of Project Future during this meeting of the House. The process is following best practice standards of project management, which, though not speedy, should bring about successful outcomes. I can say there are several projects in the pipeline, including the establishment of the new Office of the Ombudsman, a review of the postal system, and a review of the National Roads Authority, among others. Good governance also requires that the technology government uses is not only fit for purpose, but is also secure. To that end, government has developed an e-government strategy that will be released to the public shortly. A pilot project that will include enabling infrastructure, which covers all government entities, should be functional within 9 months of Cabinet approval. The approach being proposed, while very advanced, is extremely economical and based on the proven model developed by Estonia. A concerted effort to encourage the growth of e-government was a Progressives' manifesto promise. So here again, we are continuing to deliver on our promises. In parallel with the wider e-government implementation, we are nearing completion on a project to automate the process for tax-exempt certificates, which generates about $10 million per year in revenue. When complete, this will free up considerable staff time to focus on other areas. This is all part of making government more efficient and cost-effective. We have reached an agreement with Deloitte for business process reengineering and technical writing support in preparation for digitizing processes within government. Under this arrangement, business processes for the Department of Commerce and Investment are being reengineered, and a business case is being developed for an online system for the Department of Planning. Over at Lands and Survey, an online form system will be introduced by July this year to improve the experience of our customers. This new product will significantly reduce turnaround times for registration, improve accuracy and customer service, and reduce the burden on Lands and Survey staff to allow greater efficiencies in other areas. Madam Speaker, we are considering moving to an electronic vehicle registration system. It is anticipated that this system will improve workflow at the Department of Vehicle and Driver's Licensing to better serve the public. It will also allow better tracking of unpaid vehicle licensing fees and will assist law enforcement in the ticketing of traffic offenders. Madam Speaker, good governance is also about communication. To that end, this government will continue to enhance government's internal communications. Following last year's review of our communications by a group from the UK Government Communication Service, the Cabinet Office is implementing that report's recommendations. One major focus will be to modernize government's internal communications to better engage staff and connect them with government's priorities and promote collaboration within all ministries and departments. This is being done with the support of a UK government communications professional whose service is being provided at no cost to the Cayman Islands government. There are further plans to appoint a Director of Communications within the Cabinet Office to coordinate and improve overall communications across the public sector. Madam Speaker, while good governance means sound financial management, ethical leadership, community engagement, and long-term development and planning, it is also about providing value for money and providing a responsive service to the people of these islands. With regards to value for money, government will soon create a Public Utilities Commission, which will regulate the provision of electricity, water, telephony, and internet broadband services. It is expected that changes to accommodate the new commission will provide several economic and social benefits throughout the Cayman Islands, including the possibility to attract additional investment, thereby ensuring the Cayman Islands continues to have modern, competitive, and reliable utilities services. Good governance also relies on an honest and transparent procurement system, and so the Minister of Finance and Economic Development will lead the full implementation of a new procurement law, which will lay the foundation for all future public sector procurement in these islands, enable a strengthened process with increased transparency, and provide a greater focus on value for money and improved opportunities for local suppliers to be successful. It will give comfort to Caymanians and residents that their tax dollars are being spent honestly and in their collective interest, and not to the benefit of a select few, as has happened in the past. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Development will also enhance the robustness of economic impact studies through the preparation of a system of national accounts, supply and use table, which will show the value of major goods and services supplied and used across all economic sectors of the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, good governance also means a level playing field for each and every voter in our jurisdiction. Following the next dissolution of this House, the Elections Office will administer the first general elections in these islands to be conducted on the basis of 19 single-member electoral districts with the one-person, one-vote system. This is one more illustration of a fulfilled commitment as set out in the Progressives Manifesto. Madam Speaker, good governance is also being carried forward through the newly developed Civil Service 5-year strategic plan, which spans from 2016 to 2021. This is being led by the Deputy Governor, who is championing the Civil Service Reimagined campaign. As part of the campaign, upwards of 300 employees and external stakeholders were consulted. It was from that consultation that the strategic plan was formed. It focuses on 5 strategic areas: leadership, customer service, talent development, as well as communications and governance. Over the next 5 years, the civil service will focus on improving capabilities and performance in these key areas so that it is better poised to deliver on the policy mandate of the elected government and demonstrate how its work is positively impacting outcomes within Cayman society. Madam Speaker, in the next fiscal year, the portfolio of the civil service will systematically work to promote accountability at all levels of the organization. As headcount within the civil service has been mostly constrained and the work that needs to be delivered on behalf of the community continues to increase, it is important that every employee performs to a high standard. Staff who consistently underperform cause more work for fellow employees and threaten the achievement of results. The Deputy Governor is also leading the change on this and is committed to tackling poor performance in the civil service, which, unchecked, can cause reputational damage and, equally concerning, can stifle the morale and productivity of high-performing staff. During the coming year, government will also modernize the terms and conditions of the civil service by bringing legislation to increase the retirement age within the civil service, progress considerations to introduce cost sharing for health care, and correct the long-standing pay inequities that resulted from mandatory policies that stifled pay progression for long-serving staff. Madam Speaker, while we are writing the terms for public servants, we're also cognizant of the need to address employment issues, education, and the overall health of everyone in this community. I spoke earlier of the falling unemployment rate amongst Caymanians. As will be obvious to anyone who has listened so far, this government has been working and will continue to work to create opportunities, including employment, for our people. So while Caymanian unemployment is at its lowest since 2007, we in this Honorable House know full well that there are good, honest members of our community who need some additional help to obtain and keep employment. The Ready to Work Cayman program is a partnership between government and the private sector, whereby private sector firms provide jobs and training, and government provides some human resource assistance and also assists prospective job holders with counseling and other soft skills needed to get and retain employment. Individuals who are feeling down and out may not always present their best efforts in the workplace, which can be a hindrance to getting as well as keeping employment. Many times all they need is someone to talk to, someone they can trust, someone who can provide the proper guidance and some reassurance. This approach has never been tried in Cayman before, but this government and this Minister of Employment remain committed, as we have always been, to ensuring that every willing and able Caymanian without a job has access to one. We believe that the best social program is a good job. For some, the Ready to Work program will be their best chance to regain and keep employment. There are currently 33 active participants in various phases of the program, which is growing each month, with the goal being to place 175 people in jobs by February next year. The results so far have been promising, and I thank the public servants heading this up, as well as the private businesses that have come on board to provide jobs and training. Thanks too, Madam Speaker, to the many private sector individuals who volunteered for the task force and worked with government to guide this important initiative. Madam Speaker, this is not all the Ministry of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs is doing to ensure that our people are trained. In September this year, the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education Services will launch the second annual Education Plan of Action. The plan was developed through collaboration between the Ministry, Department, and all government school principals, and will focus on 9 targets in the areas of literacy, numeracy, technical and vocational education training, special education needs and disabilities, science, and behavior. The plan demonstrates a cohesive framework for improvement for education leaders in the public education system. The Ministry and Department will also build upon the work started in 2015-2016 to implement a positive behavioral intervention in all government schools. The initiative is a prevention-oriented way for school personnel to organize evidence-based practices, improve their implementation of those practices, and maximize academic and social behavior outcomes for students. A strategic outline case has been approved for the continuation of the building of a new John Gray High School. The Ministry of Education has started the tendering process with the intention to pre-qualify potential contractors to be selected for the process. Construction is expected to begin within the next few months, with the first phase, the school's gymnasium, to be completed in May 2017. Madam Speaker, we chose to start with the gym because that building is a central part of the school's infrastructure. It is the closest structure to the current John Gray site, and it is already 60% complete. Also, it will provide an improved sporting facility for school and community use. This is yet another manifesto promise being kept. And it is an important promise that is being kept because those who benefit are Caymanian youngsters who are the future of these islands. They deserve to be educated in facilities that assist their education process and help them to succeed. Madam Speaker, we also promised in our manifesto to implement a national minimum wage, which we introduced in March this year. We said from the beginning that the implementation of a minimum wage was a priority. We have delivered on that promise. Madam Speaker, we are also the government that has had the political will to tackle the archaic national pensions law. I'm proud to say that we were able to get the legislation approved in this House just a few weeks ago. Firstly, the new law sets Cayman's normal private sector retirement age at 65 instead of the current 60 or the previous 60, and it requires higher earners to put more into their retirement savings each year. With this change, we are giving employees and employers the option of keeping on staff workers who are capable and willing to work past the age of 60. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Education, Employment and Gender Affairs will continue to build upon its work to create a culture of compliance through its legislative reform. Now that the National Pensions Amendment Bill 2016 has been approved, it is anticipated that the pensions investment regulations and its general regulations will be finalized during this financial year. We also anticipate that the current labor law will be repealed and replaced with the Labor Relations Law 2016. This legislative reform will clarify the law for the benefit of all users, employees and employers and other stakeholders, institute a more effective deterrent to non-compliance by introducing an administrative fine regime, and introduce efforts to lessen the opportunities or loopholes for structural discrimination against Caymanian employees. Madam Speaker, we know that the country is badly in need of a proper mental health facility. We are spending tens of thousands of dollars to send people overseas for treatment, and the number of people in need continues to rise. Here at home, some of our residents with mental illnesses are homeless. Some go in and out of our inpatient unit. Some live with family and friends, while others are in prison. With that in mind, this government has determined that we need to find a way to correct this. As such, an outline business case has been prepared, which Cabinet has approved. The 2016-2017 budget contains funding to start this work in earnest so that we can provide a modern, humane environment for the treatment of mental illness in our community. Madam Speaker, a modern disabilities law has also been long overdue, and I'm pleased to be able to say that in the course of the coming year, we will bring to this House a disabilities bill which will seek to address this situation. We have also funded and continue to fund the Mosquito Research and Control Unit in the fight against mosquito-borne illnesses. MRCU has partnered with biotechnology company Oxitec to eradicate the Aedes aegypti mosquito, which carries diseases such as the Zika, chikungunya, and dengue viruses. MRCU has done an extraordinary job over the years to protect our community from these diseases, and government is committed to providing the funding for them to continue their good work. At the forefront in the fight of all ailments, Madam Speaker, are our doctors and nurses. During this next year, the Department of Health Regulatory Services will review the registration process for healthcare practitioners with a view to introducing an electronic system to file applications. They will also work with the Health Insurance Commission to investigate the feasibility of a national health insurance plan for retirees and senior citizens. Madam Speaker, I also wish to advise the House and the country that after carefully considering the merits and demerits of legalizing the use of medical cannabinoid oil to treat those in our community with a debilitating disease, whether cancer, glaucoma, or perhaps even severe epilepsy, government is persuaded that it is better to favor hope and compassion over fear. Thus, Cabinet has issued instructions to the legal department to draft a bill that will allow medical doctors to prescribe cannabinoid oil to patients who may benefit. We are treating this as a matter of urgency, for we are keenly aware that time is not a luxury for many of those whom this drug may benefit. Madam Speaker, for those who may doubt the wisdom of this decision, I wish they could have been present when a young Caymanian, who in making a case for his very sick wife to be able to access the oil that they believe will help defeat her illness, said that his wife's choice currently is death or death. That is their reality, for there is no standard medication or treatment available that gives them hope. I want to add, Madam Speaker, that I am speaking here about an oil extract from the cannabis plant that has been prepared for medical purposes and that will be imported into the Cayman Islands in a fashion similar to medical morphine. I am not talking about legalizing the use of the cannabis plant itself for medical or other uses. Madam Speaker, good nutrition is also important to health. This government has long understood that a healthy agriculture and farming community is necessary for a healthy community. The Progressives Manifesto promises to support agriculture and farming and to encourage the use of modern farming techniques and technology. This we have been doing, and we have seen an increase in both the quantity and quality of available local produce and livestock. And as farming is becoming more attractive, there are more commercial farms starting up. All of this is good for farmers, and for consumers. Indeed, given the growth and popularity in the market at the cricket grounds, there will be a second phase built on the same location to accommodate the demand. Next year will be the 50th anniversary of the Agriculture Show, and plans are to celebrate this auspicious occasion in the manner befitting it. As a farmer myself, I am certainly looking forward to that happy occasion. Madam Speaker, also in October this year, the Cayman Islands will be host to the Caribbean Week of Agriculture, where 400 delegates from the region will gather to discuss agriculture and exchange ideas. In conjunction, local merchants will host a trade show to highlight and sell their products. All of this, Madam Speaker, should come as no surprise to anyone. Agriculture has always advanced with the progressives in government, and we will ensure that this continues to be the case in the future. Physical and mental health go hand in hand with the health of our society, from the youngest to the eldest amongst us. The Ministry of Community Affairs, Youth and Sports is continuing its work to develop a national policy of older persons and is completing the Poor Persons Relief Regulations to streamline the processing of the applications of those most in need. The Ministry will continue to advocate for and strengthen child safeguarding measures and therapeutic rehabilitation for the protection of all children in the Cayman Islands. Counseling and family services will be expanded and enhanced to more effectively address a broader range of emerging needs in our society, with a goal to improve the lives of those who access those services. When the family unit does break down, they often turn to the courts. In June, the courts will be ready to introduce mediation within the context of family proceedings in both the Grand and Summary Courts. Madam Speaker, this is going to be a completely different role for judges and magistrates, who as mediators will encourage and facilitate parties to arrive at settlement. This should expedite family proceedings and avoid expensive, protracted legal battles. Just as we have to look after the health and well-being of our people and our citizens, Madam Speaker, we also have to employ vigilance when taking care of our environment. We all know, Madam Speaker, that it is our pristine environment, our clear emerald waters, and our powder white sandy beaches that draw visitors to our shores day after day, year after year. As you will recall, Madam Speaker, it was this administration, not even one full year in office, that in December 2013, after 10 years of talk and in the face of significant resistance from all sides and nooks and crannies, was able to pass the National Conservation Law. The Department of Environment will continue to work with the National Conservation Council to realize the full implementation of the law. Conservation of the beautiful waters and its inhabitants is not just a Cayman concern, but a regional one. As such, the Department of Environment will host the 69th Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute Conference in November this year, with the theme, Fishing for Fun, Food, and the Future, Fitting Recreational Fisheries into Marine Protected Areas Management. About 250 people from countries throughout the region and beyond are expected to attend this conference. It will be another opportunity for the Cayman Islands to showcase its pristine environment and prove that we care for all that is above and below the water. Our waters provide so many sporting opportunities for pleasure and fitness, and it is incumbent on us to make sure that our land lovers also keep physically fit. The Ministry of Community Affairs, Youth and Sports has developed preliminary recommendations for the improvement of physical education and school sports. Madam Speaker, we believe physical education and school sports are important to our community as a whole, to increase physical competence, health-related fitness, self-responsibility, and just plain old enjoyment of physical activity. I firmly believe that most youngsters who are physically active and fit throughout their school years will keep up the practice during their adult years, helping them ward off the non-communicable diseases that are prevalent in Cayman society, particularly diabetes and heart disease. We vow to put an emphasis on the improvement of our sports regime, and we are delivering on that promise. As such, we have built a track at the Bordentown Primary School for the use of school children to give another venue for sports tourism and to provide exercise opportunities to the broader community. And because our young people are so important to the future of the Cayman Islands, the Ministry will continue to partner with non-governmental entities to deliver a wide variety of youth programming throughout the districts. If we do not enable our young people to grow up to be good, responsible citizens, they may turn to a life of crime, and that, Madam Speaker, is not what any of us in this House desire. But we know that crime does exist in Cayman, just as it does in any jurisdiction. However, even though someone may have broken the law, they still need to be dealt with humanely. In March this year, we opened the new Cayman Islands Prisoner Detention Center. With the opening of this facility, this government addressed the deplorable conditions of the holding cells at the police stations in West Bay and Georgetown. The suites can hold up to 24 individuals. It is safe, secure, and well monitored. Over at Northwood Prison, a comprehensive business case is in the works to either refurbish or rebuild that prison's B wing. This government also plans to develop a livestock and agriculture program at the prison, which will not only assist with feeding the prison population, but will hopefully give inmates the skills and interests to continue these endeavors when they leave prison. Those who do find themselves afoul of the law, Madam Speaker, often end up in our court system. Once again, the Honorable Chief Justice, in his Grand Court opening speech, identified relevant statistics concerning the growth of court work and the need for enhanced facilities in order to adequately administer justice in the Cayman Islands. This government has engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers to produce an outline business case for new courthouse facilities. That business case is expected to cover the existing and future needs of the court, which include appropriate security features, adequate facilities to accommodate mediation and other tribunal services, and complex large-scale trials. The design also reflects the needs of third-party courthouse users, which include jurors, counsel, other government agencies, and members of the public. Madam Speaker, over the course of the next 18 months, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions will continue work on the implementation of the recommendations of the Criminal Justice Advisor, including in particular work on refining its electronic case management system to enable more reliable collection of performance data and interface with the police and courts. Work has begun and will continue on the development of a system of cautioning of offenders to divert them from the criminal justice system in appropriate cases. Such a system will be beneficial to those accused of minor offenses and may have the effect of reducing public expenditure in the criminal justice system as a whole. The office also hopes to explore the possibility of developing a witness care unit to better cater to the needs of victims and witnesses. While members of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service continue their efforts to identify and confront crime, the public and members of this House should at all times ensure that they have our full support. That said, Madam Speaker, we are all aware of recent incidents that have given members of this Honourable House and the public concern around aspects of policing. I know that members of this House would have been pleased to hear the Governor confirm earlier that it is her intention to have the incoming Commissioner of Police review the service and make any changes that may be necessary to improve policing in these islands. As we have seen, the Governor has already convened a recruitment panel to select the new Commissioner of Police. The panel includes two prominent private sector individuals, the Honourable Linford Pearson, former member of this House and former Speaker, and Mr. Don Seymour. I am sure that all members of the Honourable House would wish the Governor and the panel every success in filling this key leadership role within the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, and I'm sure that all members of this Honourable House would join me in thanking both members, the Honourable Dr. Linford Pearson and Mr. Don Seymour, for agreeing to carry out this important Judy. Madam Speaker, as members of this House would have also learned through the press, after a comprehensive local recruitment process, Chief Superintendent Kurt Walton has been selected for promotion to the rank of Deputy Commissioner of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service. On behalf of the government and of this Honorable House, I take this opportunity to congratulate him and wish him well. Madam Speaker, we have to be mindful of the security of the country as a whole and do our best to keep our borders free of illegal activity. And that, Madam Speaker, involves our Customs Department and our Immigration Department. This government will see the completion of the construction of a new 3,000 square foot facility to house the Customs Department $2.1 million mobile X-ray machine and provide offices for both the Freight Security Initiative section and the Container Processing and Inspection Unit. That building is being constructed adjacent to the Port Authority's Cargo Distribution Center off Portland Road in Georgetown. Our Immigration Department will seek to strengthen business processes by automating the submission of documentation with regard to services such as permanent residency, work permits, visas, and border control. This is part of an ongoing focus on improving customer service, and these efforts will continue in other areas such as service quality and speed. Madam Speaker, we have also been working toward making Cayman a more attractive place for ultra net worth individuals to visit, and more importantly, to live and invest here. I expect Cabinet to receive and consider the various proposals to reach this goal in the coming weeks. Madam Speaker, the House would be aware that following the judicial review decision last year that highlighted concerns regarding the permanent residency point system, the government engaged local law firm Rich & Connolly to conduct a thorough legal review of the matter. Madam Speaker, an extensive report was received from the firm last Friday. Once an analysis of the report has been done, I expect to be able to make a statement with respect to the matter later in this meeting of the House. Madam Speaker, this is too important an issue for us not to get it right. Madam Speaker, we also have to look inward at government when it comes to security. A multi-agency approach has been adopted to address cybersecurity with participation from IT leaders across the public sector, coordinated by the Cayman Islands Government Cyber Team, consisting of the Director of E-Government, the Assistant Chief Officer in the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the Managing Director of the Information Communications Technology Authority. Assistance was also received from United Kingdom cybersecurity experts. In December 2015, Cabinet tasked the team to address known IT security vulnerabilities. The team subsequently presented its plan, which aims to address people, process, technology, and governance challenges. The team has completed 2 requests for proposals, one for new firewalls and modern network architecture for the core government network, and the second for consultancy support with implementation of the National Institute of Standards Cybersecurity Framework, which government has adopted as its standard. Additionally, cybersecurity awareness education and training support will be instituted across the public sector. There will be continued focus on cybersecurity in the coming year. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding all of the above, without addressing critical infrastructure needs, the quality of life in these islands will suffer. Cognizant of this, this administration has striven to take on issues which have been dodged or ignored by governments in the past. I will begin, Madam Speaker, with the Georgetown landfill. We knew even before we were elected that taking on the issue of the Georgetown landfill was going to be an arduous and complex task. But we campaigned on the promise that we would find a viable long-term solution for the processing of our refuse. We do not need stopgaps or temporary measures. We need a modern international strategic waste management system that uses several options in managing waste. Madam Speaker, we all know that the landfill didn't just develop overnight. Neither will the resolution. But we are well on our way. The strategic outline case has been finalized and published, and the draft outline business case is under review. The outline business case will be made available to the public for comment when it is released. After approval, it is anticipated that the procurement of a waste management system will take place later this year, and a suitable request for proposals will be advertised seeking private sector partners. The construction and commissioning of the project will follow. I can also confirm, Madam Speaker, that in addition to any private sector partner, sources of funding are being identified within government to meet government's projected ongoing financial contribution to the project over the next 25 years. This is a further indication of our seriousness and commitment to provide a modern, sustainable waste management solution for the islands. Madam Speaker, while we will not have a system in place by the end of this term, I do believe that we will see shovels in the ground next year. I admit, Madam Speaker, that I smile wryly when I hear some in the press and elsewhere repeating over and over, "Just fix the dump." I smile because if the fix was that easy, then past governments would have fixed it already. The path we are on is the closest that the country has ever been to having a waste management solution that will not only help solve the problem that we now call Mount Trashmore, but will ensure that there are no more Mount Trashmores. We are identifying the best way forward as well as finding funding sources. Given the list of accomplishments under our belt, we have proved our determination to finish what we start. The same applies here, and the dump will get fixed. Madam Speaker, we are also making progress on other aspects of waste management. Cabinet has already approved funding for the contract for the removal and shredding of the hundreds of thousands of old tires at the landfill in Georgetown and Cayman Brac. The shredded tires will be recycled for use by two local companies as what is called tire-derived aggregate. Once gone, the area taken up by the tires will be used as a composting site for organic matter, further reducing the trash that goes into the landfill. Madam Speaker, following the recent announcement by private sector company Junk that it would close its collection depots on 1st June, the Department of Environmental Health has stepped into the breach and will temporarily take over the 7 recycling depots located at local supermarkets. This government and this Minister for Health did not wish to see the recycling initiative end and lose the momentum that has been achieved so far. The private sector will have the opportunity to bid to take over recycling efforts once the request for proposals for the entire waste management solution for all 3 islands is advertised. Madam Speaker, a review of the environmental health laws and associated regulations will also be undertaken in the course of this year to more effectively regulate all of environmental health and waste management functions. As our economy grows, so will our population. As such, it is important for the country to ensure that we have the necessary road infrastructure to cope. In addition, the success of the Georgetown Revitalization Project depends heavily on improving the road network in and out of the city center. During this administration, many roadwork projects have been completed while others are scheduled. We have already seen the widening of Godfrey Nixon Way and Smith Road. Humber Lane now joins the Smith Road, connecting Smith Road to Elgin Avenue. Redgate Road has been extended so that it now connects to the Airport Road. All of these improvements are helping to take traffic congestion out of the town center and will ultimately allow some roads to be pedestrianized. Work is underway to make Estella Tibbetts a 4-lane carriageway, which is a joint project between government, the National Roads Authority, and DART. And improvements are slated for Thomas Russell Way, Edward and 4th Streets, Bobby Thompson Way, and the Linford Pearson Highway. Bobby Thompson Way and the Linford Pearson Highway will both be expanded to 4 lanes over the course of the coming year. Work will shortly commence on these projects, starting on the eastern end of Linford Pearson Highway near the church and the roundabout adjacent to the Lions Center. Work is also currently being done to improve the road between Bordentown and Breakers. Madam Speaker, all of these roadworks are paving the way for the much-needed revitalization of Georgetown, an initiative on which this government campaigned. Again, Madam Speaker, we are implementing our promises, and motorists, whether visiting Cayman or living here, will benefit. Improved road networks mean less time spent in traffic, which leads to less gasoline consumption, time saved, and reduced stress. All of the public infrastructure projects, as well as the private sector development I spoke of earlier, strengthen our economy and create employment for our people. Madam Speaker, this includes employment for people on the sister islands, where we will continue to facilitate the creation of jobs in the tourism sector and in other related sectors. In this next fiscal year, we'll also see completion of the construction of the 25-meter swimming pool on the Brack playfield, as well as the internal works of the multipurpose hall on the bluff. We're attracting more visitors to the Brack with improvements that were made to the Charles Colonel International Airport, and Cayman Airways has increased flights to that destination. Because of the increase in tourists, the Department of Tourism has been licensing private villas to accommodate our visitors. Madam Speaker, as I am sure you are aware, the Cayman Brack Beach Resort has expanded, offering visitors a unique experience that can only be found in the sister islands. We made a promise to stimulate development and encourage sustainable growth on the sister islands, and we are delivering on our promise. I am certain that the Deputy Premier will speak to these issues in greater detail when he rises to make his contribution. Madam Speaker, all of these efforts collectively create a platform to diversify our economy and provide opportunities for Caymanian entrepreneurship to thrive, for Caymanian businesses to grow, and for Caymanian workers to have good jobs to support their families and live good lives. As has been our practice in years past, in a few days this government will present to this House our annual report. In it, we will highlight our many accomplishments, and once again, the country will note that we are continuing to keep our promises. This is a government that gets things done. While that report will be thorough, I want to summarize some of the highlights and progress that this government has made in the past 3 years. It will be apparent that we are delivering on our promises and that we have gotten a lot done. Madam Speaker, the Georgetown Revitalization Project and road improvements, we've started that. We've reduced fees for small businesses and assistance for entrepreneurs. We've introduced the national minimum wage. We've begun the review of the public management and finance law and are making the required changes. We are supporting agriculture and the farming community, promoting modern farming techniques and technology. We are modernizing the Owen Roberts International Airport. We have upgraded the Charles Colonel Airport to international airport status. Our plans to improve the cargo port and build a cruise berthing facility have begun. We are working to create a long-term waste management solution. We are reviewing and improving the education system. We are moving to complete the John Gray High School. We are in the process of reviewing and passing new labor legislation. We have introduced single-member constituencies and the concept of one person, one vote. We have updated the pensions law, including increasing the retirement age. We are moving swiftly to increase the retirement age for civil servants. Our plans for civil servants to contribute to the health care costs are underway. We have approved amendments to the trade and business licensing law. We have updated the builders law. We have approved the national conservation law. We've approved a new liquor licensing law. We are creating local jobs through tourism development in the sister islands. We have improved air service to and from both Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Madam Speaker, this is an impressive resume and track record of achievement by this administration. It shows clearly that we do what we say, and what we do is for the benefit of the Caymanian people and the Cayman Islands. It is not for personal gain or for ego. Madam Speaker, whilst I am pleased with all that we have achieved, I cannot close today without recognizing that we on this side have had our challenges. Amongst the challenges has been the reduction of a majority in this House. It has increased the burden of work for those on this side, and it has created logistical difficulties. It has caused delays, including the delay in the delivery of this budget. But over the past 6 months, Madam Speaker, the loss of the 3 members has made the remaining 10 of us even stronger and more committed. We who still remain believe our principal duty is to keep our promises and complete the work our people sent us here to do. We who still remain place the ambitions and interests of our people above personal ambition or conviction. I am proud, Madam Speaker, of this team as we enter the home stretch. We have shown mettle and determination. We will not be distracted or intimidated. We will fight on for those who elected us and the Cayman Islands as a whole, and we will complete the work we set out to do. We will close out the term delivering on our promises and showing that we are indeed a government that gets things done. We started our term with ambitious goals, and we remain ambitious for the future of our islands and our people. We have accomplished much, and have put in place the platform from which to achieve even more. This is a government that does not plan in 4-year terms, but for the long term. The budget that we will present today is one that provides benefits for our people today, tomorrow, and beyond. We will not gamble with the future of Cayman. Neither do we intend to fight the wearisome political battles of yesterday. As we have seen as the events around beneficial ownership have played out, these times require a new kind of politics. Bravado and bluster may be amusing at times, but there is too much at stake for mere entertainment. This is a government of responsibility, of honor, of dignity, and integrity. We have proven our worth both here at home and on the global stage. We have delivered on the promises we have made. In the words of former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, we as a people, as a state, and as a community have too much promise, too much potential, and too much at stake to go any other way than forward. We are too strong in our hearts, too innovative in our minds, and too firm in our beliefs to retreat from our goals. In closing, Madam Speaker, it only remains for me to thank my team, ministers and councillors, for their commitment, dedication, and discipline in adhering to our philosophy of fiscal responsibility and caring government. I also wish, Madam Speaker, to thank the team in the Office of the Premier that provides support to me and the Government Caucus. I also wish to thank the Deputy Governor and the Attorney General, as well as the Cabinet Secretary, for all of their hard work and support. And I thank you, Madam Speaker, for your commitment and for the wisdom and patience you display as you chair meetings of this Honorable House. As I did last year, Madam Speaker, I urge the House to remain focused on those things that are good, those things that are right, and those things that are in the best interest of the people of the Cayman Islands. After all, Madam Speaker, that is why they have accorded us the great privilege of being here. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Government business, bills, first reading, the appropriation July 2016 to December 2017, Bill 2016.
The bill has been deemed to have been read the first time and is now set down for its second reading.
Second reading, the appropriation July 2016 to December 2017, Bill 2016.
I recognize the Honourable Minister responsible for Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the Appropriation July 2016 to December 2017 Bill 2016.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the Honourable Minister responsible for Finance wish to speak to the bill?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank God for the privilege to rise today to speak to the Appropriation July 2016 to December 2017 Bill 2016, and for the success that He has bestowed upon us. The 2016 budget is my fourth budget as Minister of Finance and Economic Development and represents yet another steady step in our progress towards long-term fiscal stability, economic growth, and ensuring a sound financial future for our islands. Madam Speaker, when I presented this administration's first budget on the 7th of October 2013, my budget address was entitled Economic Growth Through Fiscal Prudence, and I put forward the sound reasoning that if government would practice fiscal prudence, economic growth would follow due to investors and business entities having increased confidence in the Cayman Islands. Over the past 3 fiscal years, this government has worked to do just that, improving the state of public sector finances, restoring investor confidence, lowering the cost of doing business, lowering the cost of living in certain circumstances, and bringing back national pride and optimism for our people. This was not easy, Madam Speaker, and we had to make some hard decisions along the way regarding certain services or planned capital investments. The hard decisions were necessary. It was only a few years ago that the country was experiencing increasing operating expenditure and deficit budgets, rising national debt from borrowings, falling cash reserves, and non-compliance with the principles of responsible financial management set out in the Public Management and Finance Law, or the PMFL. It was these conditions, Madam Speaker, that led the United Kingdom to step in and prescribe by law the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility, or the FFR. The FFR set extremely stringent financial rules for the government to follow. However, we have now achieved full compliance, Madam Speaker. Upon taking office in May 2013, this administration embraced the challenges imposed by the FFR and immediately tackled them head-on by establishing a medium-term fiscal strategy which set out our key fiscal policies. These fiscal policies have guided our approach to financial management, yielding strong positive results, placing the Cayman Islands in an enviable financial position we are now experiencing. Madam Speaker, this enviable position that the Cayman Islands is now experiencing includes continuous economic growth, operating surpluses by controlling expenditure, rising cash reserves, declining debt balances, declining debt to GDP ratio, declining expenditure to GDP ratio, declining revenue to GDP ratio. The 2016 budget continues these efforts and calls for no new borrowing and no new tax measures while delivering enhanced public services and advancing the development of key infrastructure projects. Madam Speaker, with respect to fiscal achievements during the three-year period of 2013-14 budget to the 2015-16 budget, over the last 3 years, this government has made significant progress to improve the financial affairs of the Cayman Islands. This achievement is due to the combined efforts of many: the Cabinet, public sector managers and employees, private sector partners, and the wider public. With respect to the medium-term fiscal strategy, or the MTFS, the foundation for the government's fiscal achievements was articulated in the MTFS, which was finalized on the 15th of August 2013. The MTFS covered the 4-year period ending 30th of June 2007. The UK government, 2017, my apologies, Madam Speaker. The UK government's Foreign and Commonwealth Office, or the FCO, conveyed its agreement to the MTFS on the 22nd of August 2013, and it was tabled in the Legislative Assembly on the 21st of November 2013. The strategies detailed in the MTFS included stabilizing revenues, lowering expenditure, lowering financing costs, reducing public sector debt, improving cash balances, lowering the cost of operations for small businesses, redeveloping Owen Roberts International Airport, and developing a modern cruise berthing facility. Over the past 3 years, Madam Speaker, government's operating revenues have grown steadily with economic growth at an average annual rate of 3.7%, surpassing the targets that were set out in the MTFS. These rising revenues over this period are the result of economic growth that was spurred in large part by the specific policy decisions of this administration to, number one, not introduce new revenue measures that would increase the tax burden, and number two, reduce taxes in those areas that would yield the greatest impact by encouraging economic growth while also reducing the cost of doing business and the cost of living where possible for residents. The specific policy measures that we introduced are as follows, Madam Speaker. Number one, reduce import duty on diesel fuel used by CUC to generate electricity. Number two, reduce import duty for licensed traders. Number three, reduce import duty on building materials. Number four, reduce trade and business license fees for small business licensees. Number five, the continuation of the current stamp duty and import duty concessions for the sister islands. And number six, Madam Speaker, following the amendment of the customs tariff law on the 5th of April 2012 that removed the duty exempt status for schools, this administration in February 2014 took a reasoned approach to waiving import duties for all private schools for all items to be used directly in the classroom in order to keep the cost of education from rising. Madam Speaker, when the government decided to remove the requirements for government strategy, my apologies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, when the government decided to remove the requirements for government agencies to pay import duty as part of a cost reduction measure, government schools also benefited from not paying import duties. To ensure that education remains affordable for all, as part of the aforementioned exercise, this administration also amended the law to make all school supplies duty-free for private citizens and businesses alike. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to say that the Board of Directors of at least one private school, Madam Speaker, for a number of reasons related to reduced operating costs of doing business, have announced that they will not be increasing school fees for the school year starting September 2016. With respect to lower expenditure, Madam Speaker, this administration took decisive action very early to reduce operating expenditure where possible, and to strictly control any growth in the expenses to ensure that government would not have to cut jobs, even though this was alluded to by the Honorable Minister Simmons at the FCO in June 2013. During the 2013-14 and 2014-15 financial years, expenditure was kept well below the 2012-2013 expenditure levels. In 2013-14, operating expenditure was some $18.4 million less than the 2012-13 year, and between 2013-14 and 2014-15, expenditure fell by another $15.2 million. These reductions were achieved by strengthening the overall governance and management of the finance function across the public sector. Significant emphasis was placed on compliance with procurement policies and strict adherence to best practice. A significant contributing element to the decrease in operating expenditure has been the cost control measure of requiring any requested increase to headcount in the civil service to be subject to scrutiny by a moratorium committee, which is headed by the Honorable Deputy Governor, Madam Speaker. The portfolio of the civil service has confirmed that over the past 3 years, there has been a clear decrease in the size of the civil service. At the 30th of June 2013, there were 3,601 civil servants. This dropped to 3,571 at the 30th of June 2014, and further to 3,484 at the end of June 2015. With respect to lowering financing costs, Madam Speaker, financing costs have decreased steadily over the 2013-14 to the 2015-16 period, as the core government debt balance has been declining at an average rate of 4.3%, or CI $23.5 million per year on year since July 2013. This reflects the following important factors, Madam Speaker. Government has not undertaken any borrowing over the 3-year period. Government eliminated its revolving overdraft facility in July 2014. Madam Speaker, I would point out that the Cayman Islands has been using an overdraft facility for at least 20 years. Debt principal has been reduced by government's repayment of debt, and government's renegotiation of the interest rates with respect to several of its loans has secured lower interest rates and reduced the amount of interest payable in each year. It is expected that the government will save CI $6.2 million in financing expense over a 10-year period from these actions, Madam Speaker. With respect to capital investments, government has also restricted the level of capital investment funding to surplus cash generated from operating activities, while remaining cognizant that there is a delicate balance to be struck between the containment of capital investment spending and the need for adequate investment in a growing economy such as ours. With respect to reducing public sector debt, our aggressive debt management strategy of no new borrowing, accelerated payments, and debt restructuring has yielded a $116.4 million reduction in entire public sector debt over the past 3 financial years, from $709.8 million at the 30th of June 2013 to a forecast balance of $593.4 million at the 30th of June 2016. Madam Speaker, this figure is inclusive of the debt balances for both core government and SAGCs. A country's debt to GDP ratio is a measure of the size of its debt compared to its economic output, or the size of its economy. It is an excellent indicator of the overall health of an economy and its resilience to periods of economic slowdown. Generally, the higher a country's debt, the less able it is to spend in order to stimulate the economy, respond to natural disasters and catastrophes, or external shocks, or even to invest in improved services for its people. Moody's Investor Service, in an article dated 2nd of February 2016, wrote in an article entitled Caribbean Sovereigns Face a Silent Debt Crisis, stated, "The Caribbean region has become one of the most indebted in the world as a slow and steady buildup of debt has left the region's economies vulnerable to external shocks and the heightened risk of sovereign defaults. It happened gradually over many years. Currently, 12 of the 20 Caribbean economies for which data is available have government debt-to-GDP ratios of over 60%, and 4 have a debt-to-GDP ratio in excess of 100%. Close quote. Madam Speaker, I am happy to report that the Cayman Islands is not in this category. Our debt-to-GDP ratio has improved over the past 3 years from 22% in 2012-13 to 18% in 2015-16 fiscal year for the core government, and from 27.2% in 2012-13 to 21.2% in the 2015-16 fiscal year for the entire public sector. We are on track to see further improvements in these ratios in the 2016-17 fiscal year. With respect to improving cash balances, Madam Speaker, the expected results of growing revenues with economic growth, reducing operating expenditure and finance expenses, and containing capital investment is improved cash or bank account balances held by the government. Government's significantly improved bank account balances led to its decision in July 2014 to cancel the revolving overdraft facility, thereby reducing financing expenses. Furthermore, government's improved bank account balances led to the UK government's FCO acknowledging in an 18 February 2016 letter that government had satisfied the cash reserve ratios which is specified in the FFR. It is clear from the preceding information, Madam Speaker, that government's fiscal achievements in the 3 years 2013-14 to 2015-16 have been impressive and undoubtedly demonstrate our commitment to stabilize the country's finances and secure Cayman's future. With respect to improved financial management, Madam Speaker, in addition to the specific fiscal achievements that I just spoke of, this administration has strengthened the overall financial management within the government, placing significant importance and emphasis on improved internal business processes, adherence to PMFL, and compliance with the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, or IPSAS. During the past 3 years, significant progress has been made to improve the quality and timeliness of the financial statements being produced by public sector entities and audited by the Office of the Auditor General. Audited financial statements are necessary to allow for the Cabinet, legislators, public service managers, and the general public to make informed financial decisions and assess in performance. Last November, I provided this Honorable House with an update on the status of the production of annual accounts and the relevant audits for the government entities. I think that it is appropriate now to remind honorable members of the issues and our actions to improve the overall quality of the financial statements being produced. In my November 2015 update, I noted the vast improvement which was reported by the Auditor General in his report dated 25th of September 2015. These reports noted that core government, along with statutory authorities and government companies, have made significant strides over the last few years toward improving the quality of financial statements. It was also noted that the 2013-14 financial year would likely be the first time that no ministry, portfolio, statutory authority, or government company would receive an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. Of the 37 audits completed for the year ended 30th June 2014, all of them received either an unqualified or a qualified opinion. Remarkably, the majority of these were unqualified, the best possible audit opinion an entity can receive. Additionally, for the financial year ended 30th June 2015, 30 audits were completed, and 80% of those completed received an unqualified opinion, with the remainder being qualified opinions. The last element of financial reporting is the entire public sector consolidated financial statements, which are prepared by the Ministry of Finance. This involves taking all of the financial statements of the government's 42 public sector entities and consolidating them. I noted previously that while the financial statements for the year ended 30th June 2014 received an adverse opinion, this was also the first audit opinion that had been issued on the entire public sector statements since the law was introduced in 2004, Madam Speaker. While this is not the desired opinion, it did show the vast improvement where we are now able to have an audit conducted versus the disclaimer of opinion issued in previous years. Madam Speaker, you will recall that I previously identified 5 issues which led to the adverse opinion for the entire public sector accounts, which are as follows. Number 1, material omissions. Number 2, property, plant, and equipment, valuation, and completeness. Number 3, erroneous opening and closing balances. Number 4, revenue and related receivables completeness. And number 5, consolidation integrity issues. These 5 qualifying issues pose substantial challenges. However, significant action has been taken to address these, which I will now explain, Madam Speaker. With respect to material omissions, this Honorable House will no doubt recall that the issue regarding material omissions relate to the requirement to recognize the pension and the post-retirement health care liabilities. Madam Speaker, the Audit Office identified that both post-retirement benefits, that being pension and health care, and the accounting for the Public Sector Pension Board were not fully included in the EPS consolidated financial statements. The post-retirement health care liabilities of approximately $1.2 billion were not included on the face of the primary statements in the 2013-14 EPS consolidated financial statements, but are referenced as disclosures in notes to the financial statements. It was a policy decision of the government to disclose details of the post-retirement health care liabilities and expenses in the notes to the financial statements. This has been the practice since the implementation of accrual accounting under the PMFL in 2004, Madam Speaker. Pension obligation liabilities, on the other hand, Madam Speaker, have been stated on the face of the government's balance sheet for many years, and further details relating thereto are provided in the notes to the financial statements. Madam Speaker, you will recall that I noted recently in this Honorable House that the government is exploring options to reduce the pension and post-retirement health care obligations, such as increasing the retirement age for civil servants from 60 to 65 years of age, introducing health insurance premium copay for civil servants, and reducing the maximum lifetime medical benefit for civil servants. It is expected that such changes will not occur until 2018, allowing sufficient time for discussions, Madam Speaker. With respect to property, plant, and equipment, valuation, and completeness, Madam Speaker, I recently reported how IPSAS requires that consistent accounting policies are applied across all entities in the EPS, and that not all of government's assets are reported at their revalued amounts, as most statutory authorities and government companies have not yet completed a revaluation of their fixed assets. I am pleased to announce that we currently have our first entire public sector valuation process underway. This valuation includes both real estate and the entire road network. This valuation will address the issues raised by the Auditor General and is scheduled to be completed in time to be included in the 2015-16 annual accounts. With respect to erroneous opening and closing balances, Madam Speaker, you will recall the issue of erroneous opening and closing balances generally relate to audits not being completed within the statutory deadline, which prevented the entire public sector accounts from reflecting any changes which may arise out of those audits. While it is not for me to speak on behalf of the Office of the Auditor General, I would like to state my support for their proactive steps taken by their office to conduct interim audits during the financial year. These interim audits will allow their office to conduct a significant amount of audit work before the start of the 2-month window, which is legislated for them to complete their audits. This approach will provide them with the best chance of completing audits within the statutory timeline, and by extension, will give the Ministry of Finance time to include any adjustments into the EPS accounts. While this addresses the audits going forward, the Ministry of Finance is still working with a few agencies who have not managed to finalize their audits from previous years. It is anticipated that these will be brought up to date in time to be included in the 2015-16 EPS accounts. With respect to revenue and related receivables completeness, Madam Speaker, the Audit Office reported that there is no system in place to ensure that the government is collecting and reporting all revenue and related receivables. The Ministry of Finance has taken this audit qualification seriously and is in the process of developing a revenue management framework which will include a comprehensive approach to ensure the completeness of revenue. This framework will include the following policies. Number 1, internal control. Number 2, risk management. Number 3, revenue collection. Number 4, financial ethics. Number 5, financial reporting. Number 6, revenue waivers. Number 7, financial and IT systems. Number 8, bad debt, as well as number 9, Madam Speaker, training and continuing education for staff involved in financial management. With the implementation of this robust and comprehensive framework, we are certain that the Auditor General's Office will agree with the accuracy of the revenue collected and recorded. With respect to consolidation integrity issues, Madam Speaker, you may recall that I mentioned previously the Auditor General's concern that there was no formal reconciliation of interagency transactions and balances between public sector entities. In some cases, the Ministry of Finance has to make judgments to eliminate entries for some interagency transactions. The Auditor General's Office has noted that this approach is not robust enough to ensure that all interagency transactions are fully eliminated. For the 2014-15 financial year, the Ministry of Finance required public sector entities to confirm and agree interagency charges. Transactions that were not substantiated were written off. The Audit Office will undoubtedly find that in auditing the 2014-15 financial year, disagreements of interagency transactions are substantially reduced. This is another example of the progress being made. Based on the findings of the Office of the Auditor General, from the 2014-15 EPS audit, the Ministry of Finance will determine if it is necessary to implement the interagency module known as Advanced Global Intercompany Systems, or AGIS, in the government's financial reporting system by the 31st of December 2016. The use of AGIS will reduce interagency transaction mismatches, as these transactions will require agreement by both counterpart agencies prior to recognition in their respective ledgers. The Ministry of Finance also continues to work on a public finance manual, which is in accordance with the best practices and generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. The manual will be disseminated to all public sector entities and will serve to improve the consistency in the application of GAAP. It is expected that the manual will be completed by the 30th of June 2016. Madam Speaker, these are the actions being taken at present to address the issues of an adverse opinion on the EPS accounts. However, I am of the view that improving the audit opinion alone is not sufficient. Therefore, the Ministry of Finance is not only working toward improving the EPS audit opinion, but work is also underway to improve reporting through the development of a more comprehensive annual report, which will be specified in an amendment to the Public Management and Finance Law during the 2016-17 financial period. At present, the public is only provided with the financial statements of the government, and in many cases, it would require an accounting degree to interpret these complex reports. The Ministry of Finance is therefore seeking to develop a reporting template that provides more insight into the operations of the government and provides the public with more information, particularly related to the outcomes achieved for the year, Madam Speaker. For this expanded report to be beneficial, it is important that information is presented in a format which is easily interpreted by members of the public. A more comprehensive annual report will also provide the public service with a means by which to demonstrate the outcomes achieved with public funds. This is yet another progressive move being made by the Ministry of Finance. With respect to the 2015-16 financial forecast, Madam Speaker, the current 2015-16 financial year, which ends on the 30th of June, has been a notable one in terms of financial performance, and is the base from which the 2016-17 budget is prepared. The 2015-16 forecasts were last updated on the 23rd of May 2016. Madam Speaker, the government is forecasted to earn $696.1 million in total revenue for 2015-16. This amount is $34.9 million higher than the $661.2 million shown in the original budget. The significant overage is mainly as a result of $16 million higher revenues from stamp duties related to land transfers, $5.3 million more from motor vehicle and other import duties, and $2 million more from tourist accommodation taxes. The forecast operating and financing expenses for the core government are expected to be $567.8 million for the 2015-16 fiscal year. This amount is $13.5 million higher than the original budget of $554.3 million. The increases were mainly as a result of the following. Number one, $8.4 million to fund an increased number of uninsured, underinsured, and indigent persons requiring specialist tertiary level medical care outside of the Cayman Islands. Number two, $2 million to fund services to respond to the higher than expected number of illegal migrants landing in the Cayman Islands. And number three, $1.4 million to fund additional mosquito control measures to mitigate the potential for outbreaks of mosquito-borne diseases such as the Zika virus. With respect to the performance of statutory authorities and government companies, statutory authorities and government companies, also referred to in the budget documents as public authorities, are forecasted to have a net operating surplus of $12.4 million for the fiscal year ending 30th of June 2016. This amount is closely in line with the $12.9 million forecasted in the original 2015-16 budget. Agencies forecasted to perform better than expected include the Civil Aviation Authority, which is on track for a $2.9 million higher surplus, and Cayman Airways is forecasting a $2 million higher surplus. These positive variances are offset by underperformance at the Cayman Islands Airports Authority and the Port Authority of the Cayman Islands, with forecasted reductions in their budgeted surplus of $4 million and $2.2 million, respectively. With respect to the forecast surplus for operating activities, the 2015-16 fiscal year forecast operating surplus for the core government, Madam Speaker, is $128.3 million, which is a $21.4 million improvement on the $106.9 million estimated in the 2015-16 approved budget. Madam Speaker, our cash balances are a key indicator of the government's overall financial performance and a critical component for securing Cayman's future. The core government is forecasted to have bank account balances totaling $414.4 million for this fiscal year ending 30th of June 2016, some $72.8 million more than the $341.6 million shown in the 2015-16 budget. The forecast closing cash position consists of an anticipated $281.6 million in the operating bank account and $132.8 million in the restricted and reserve accounts. The improved cash position is primarily due to the higher than expected operating performance and improved economic conditions. Based on the forecast cash results, the government has recently taken the decision to transfer $18 million to the Public Service Pension Fund by 30th of June 2016 to reduce the liability associated with the provision of pension benefits to retired civil servants and parliamentarians. This has been factored into the 2015-16 financial forecast. In addition, we will transfer $50 million to the General Reserve Fund by the 1st of July 2016, bringing that fund up to $95.9 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, these transfers help to reduce our long-term liabilities and secure our continued compliance with cash reserve requirements. This is another clear demonstration of the government's commitment to responsible financial management. This is the first time since 2004-2005 fiscal year that funds have been transferred to the General Reserves, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, one might ask the question, how is responsible financial management securing Cayman's future? Madam Speaker, the vastly improved operating and restricted bank account balances are necessary to fund current activities, remain compliant with the 90-day cash reserves requirement, and prepare for the November 2019, when we will have to repay in one lump sum US $312 million bullet bond. Madam Speaker, there really is an important and productive purpose for this money. If it is squandered and not used productively, this and future generations will bear the burden for a very long time. If we are not careful, the country may become like Venezuela today, where squandering of the country's wealth and resources has created an economic disaster and third world living conditions. With respect to the 2015-16 compliance with the principles of responsible financial management, Madam Speaker, overall, the government has practiced prudent financial management during the 2015-16 fiscal year and achieved compliance with the principles of responsible financial management and the framework for fiscal responsibility. This has been confirmed in writing by the FCO in their letters dated 18th of February 2016 and the 25th of May 2016. Turning now to the 2016-17 budget. The 2016-17 budget, Madam Speaker, covers an 18-month period from the 1st of July 2016 to the 31st of December 2017. This is consistent with the provisions of the Public Management and Finance Amendment Law 2015, which reflects government policy decision to transition the government's financial year away from the current 1st of July to the 30th of June period to the 1st of January to the 31st of December period. This 18-month budget provides a transitional period in order to change the government's fiscal year from the current 1 July to the 30th of June to a 1st of January to the 31st of December period. Therefore, the 2016-17 financial forecasts are not directly comparable with those of a regular budget period of 12 months, Madam Speaker. The two main reasons why the government chose to change the financial year are as follows. Number one, annually, the government collects approximately 65% of its revenue during the January to June period, with expenses generally spread evenly over the year. Aligning the start of the financial year with the high revenue earning period means that if the government were to experience a significant reduction in revenue during the January to June period, it would have sufficient time remaining in the financial year to take corrective action to mitigate the impact of the reduced revenues. With the financial year starting in July, Madam Speaker, the January to June period occurs in the last half of the financial year and severely limits the ability of the government to mitigate the consequences of any significant revenue reduction. And number two, with general elections occurring in May, switching the financial year will allow an incoming government 6 months to properly plan, prepare, and pass their substantive budget. Under the current system, an incoming government has to immediately deal with the preparation of an interim budget, followed by a full budget. This process places extreme stress on the Cabinet, members of the Legislative Assembly, and the public servants, and increases the risk of errors, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the changes of the financial year is the first phase of reforms to the government's budgeting and reporting systems. The next phase will see the implementation of a multi-year budgeting, which will come into effect on the 1st of January 2018, when the Budget and Appropriation Bill will articulate appropriations to cover 2 financial years spanning 24 months. However, government agencies will be required to continue to produce annual audited accounts, along with a performance report detailing their actual performance compared to their budget. There will also be an annual review process via the Finance Committee of the Legislative Assembly to allow an opportunity for legislators to review the government's budget. With respect to economic outlook, Madam Speaker, the preparation of the 2016-17 budget takes into consideration global and domestic economic conditions. As a government, we have a responsibility to act prudently and support sustainable economic growth. Over the past 3 years, we have done just that, and today we see the benefits of those actions: a growing economy, falling unemployment, and the absence of inflation. The economy of the Cayman Islands is an open, service-based one, focus primarily on financial services and tourism, making it largely dependent on the free movement and flow of people and capital. Our economy is directly influenced by global economic trends, particularly those occurring in the USA, which is our largest source market for tourists. In addition, the government's main sources of revenue, fees and charges, are directly linked to economic growth and the levels of consumption and transactions for goods and services. These characteristics, combined with our relatively small population and geographic size, means that the government has limited economic tools available to influence economic activity. With respect to the world economy, in its April 2016 World Economic Outlook, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, reported that the global economic growth in 2015 was 3.1%, down from 3.4% in 2014. Global growth is forecast to remain modest at 3.2% in 2016, with stronger growth in 2017 at 3.5%. The advanced economies are anticipated to expand by 1.9% and 2% in 2016 and 17, respectively. Emerging markets and developing economies are projected to have a gradual recovery, with average growth of 4.1% in 2016 and 4.6% in 2017. Madam Speaker, with respect to the Cayman Islands' economic performance and forecast for the 2016 to 2019 period, output or GDP growth in 2015, the economic performance was estimated at 2%, which is lower than the 2.4% recorded for 2014, but higher than the average of the previous 4 years of 1.6%. The service sectors, which account for 94.7% of GDP in 2015, led the economic performance with a 1.9% growth rate, driven by greater economic activity in real estate, renting, and business activities, other services, utilities, and financing and insurance services. The exception was hotels and restaurants, which declined slightly due to a slowdown in the growth of stayover arrivals, primarily due to a lack of available room stock. The real estate, renting, and business activity sector was estimated to have increased by 2.9%, with business services dominating the growth, supported by higher registration of companies and partnerships for the second consecutive year. The real estate sector recovered during the year as the total value of property transfers grew by 8.8% to $612.2 million, aided by the transfer of properties along the 7 Mile Beach corridor. Other services, which included activities of households as employers, expanded by 3.4% in 2015 as work permits for the domestic workers increased. GDP generated by the utilities sector was higher by 2.1% as consumption of both electricity and water grew in 2015 with the increase in population. The growth in utilities was also due to lower costs, particularly fuel costs, Madam Speaker. The financing and insurance services sector, which accounted for approximately 41% of GDP, was estimated to have expanded by 1.3% in 2015 from 1% in 2014. Insurance services grew as the increase in gross premiums outweighed net claims. Modest growth in financing services was due mainly to higher interest income in the local banking sector as domestic credit increased and the weighted average interest spread widened. Indicators of construction sector activity, such as the volume of imported building materials suggests that the sector expanded by 5.2%, which may be associated with several large ongoing private and public sector projects. The wholesale and retail trade sector grew at an estimated 1.1%, bolstered by a 2% growth in non-oil merchandise imports. Growth in the transportation, storage, and communication sector was estimated at 0.7%. This sector benefited from a higher number of cruise visitor arrivals, coupled with a higher volume of cargo transportation. In the telecommunications sector, broadband connections grew by 16.7%. However, total domestic and international paid calls, measured in minutes, continued on a downward trajectory as the use of voice over internet protocols become more popular. Government services expanded by 2.3%. This was due mainly to the combined effects of a marginally higher staff count and a 4% increase in salaries for core government employees in mid-2015. With respect to inflation, in 2015, the average consumer price index declined by 2.3%, compared to an average increase of 1.3% in 2014. The deflation occurred as downward pressure on prices for oil and oil-related goods and services and housing rentals outweighed upward pressure in housing rentals caused by an expansion in domestic demand from a higher population and increased economic activity. The deflation in 2015 was directly related to the lower price indices for housing and utilities, transport, restaurants and hotels, and miscellaneous goods and services. The price index for housing and utilities fell by 6.9%. The cost of electricity, gas, and other fuels, water supply, and miscellaneous services also fell with a decline in oil prices. The latter also reduced the operation of the personal transport equipment component within the transport price index. The restaurants and hotels price index declined mainly due to slower growth in the number of stayover visitors. With respect to employment, in 2015, the growth in GDP was accompanied by growth in the labor force by 3.6% to reach 39,138 persons. Total employment increased by 4%. The unemployment rate fell to 4.2%, with both Caymanian and non-Caymanian unemployment rates falling to 6.2% and 1.4% respectively. With respect to the current account, in 2015, the balance of payments current account deficit was estimated to have narrowed by 23.1% due mainly to lower merchandise imports. Additionally, estimated visitors' expenditure was higher because of strong growth in cruise visitors and marginal improvement in air arrivals. Financial services continued to provide significant inflows of revenue as new company registrations and new partnership registrations continued to increase. On the other hand, the outflow of workers' remittances is estimated to have grown slightly as foreign employment also increased. Madam Speaker, with respect to economic stimulus measures, for the 2016-17 budget, the government will continue with the following economic stimulus measures, which are designed to support economic growth and lower the cost of doing business and living here in the Cayman Islands. Number one, reduced import duty on diesel used by CUC to generate electricity. Number two, reduced import duty for licensed traders. Number three, reduced import duty on building materials. Number 4, reduced trade and business license fees for new licenses. And number 5, continuation of current incentives for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Madam Speaker, with respect to the reduced import duty on diesel, effective the 1st of January 2016, the government further reduced the import duty charged on diesel imported by Caribbean Utilities Company Limited, or CUC, for the generation of electricity from 50 cents per imperial gallon to 25 cents per imperial gallon. This measure provides essential financial relief to all consumers of electricity in Grand Cayman, residential and commercial, freeing up real cash, allowing for the opportunity to save that cash or spend it in other areas more beneficial to the wider economy. Number 2, reduced import duty rates for licensed traders. Effective the 1st of July 2014, for licensed traders only, the government reduced import duty rates on items regularly charged at 22% down to a 20% rate. This reduction to 20% will remain in effect for licensed traders. By reducing import duty rates, we are lowering the cost of doing business and expect that retailers and service providers will be able to pass these savings on to their customers, thereby lowering the cost of living and increasing aggregate output through demand for goods and services. Number 3, reduced import duty on building materials. The government will also continue to offer the import duty concession on building materials, which are currently being charged import duty at the rate of 15% versus the normal range of 17 to 22%. This will continue to act as an incentive for the construction sector. Number 4, reduce trade and business license fees. As an incentive to support the redevelopment of small and micro businesses, the government will continue to offer the following discounts on the trade and business license fees based on their location. For Georgetown and West Bay, 50% discount. For Bordentown, Northside, East End, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman, a 75% discount. And number 5, continuation of current incentives for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. The government will continue the following economic incentives for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Number 1, a 100% import duty waiver on building materials imported to Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Number 2, a 100% import duty waiver on diesel fuel for Cayman Brac Power and Light. Number 3, a 12.5 cents per gallon import duty rate, or a 83.3% duty rate waiver on the importation of motor gasoline to Cayman Brac. And number 4, a 100% waiver on stamp duty for the purchase of land in Cayman Brac. Madam Speaker, when trying to stimulate our economy, and especially with large projects by developers, we have to find the right balance between concessions and incentives and the ability of government to earn revenue that can be used to provide valuable public services and infrastructure while minimizing the burden on future generations. The government is currently developing a concessions and incentives policy framework and expects this to be completed by the 30th of September 2016. It is intended that this policy will transition the country more toward deferring revenue to be paid at a future date rather than completely waiving the revenue to be paid. This approach will go hand in hand with truly incentivizing the projects most beneficial to the country financially, socially, and economically. Madam Speaker, turning now to the 2016-17 financial forecast. The details of the financial forecast, Madam Speaker, included in the 2016-17 budget. Forecast operating revenues. Operating revenues are forecast to be $908.5 million. These forecasts are based on economic projections, specific market conditions, government policies, and historical trends. In line with our commitment to keep the tax burden low, there will be no new revenue measures introduced in 2016-17. With respect to forecast operating expenditure, the 2016-17 budget forecast total operating and financing expenses of $862.4 million for core government. This represents a 3.7% annualized increase over the 2015-16 budget and is driven by the following. Number one, $4.2 million for enhancements to the public education services through the implementation of recommendations emanating from the recent independent review of the Cayman Islands public education system and also a series of baseline school inspection reports. Number two, $3.2 million for improvements to the regulatory services provided by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority for the financial services industry in order to keep pace with ever-evolving international regulatory requirements and to prepare for the upcoming IMF and Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, assessments in 2017. Number three, $2.1 million for improved public health programs and management and control of communicable diseases. Number four, $2 million for the implementation of a remuneration strategy to address pay stagnation and pay competitiveness for civil servants. Number five, $1.4 million for the May 2017 general election. Number six, $1.1 million for additional resources for the Needs Assessment Unit and the Department of Children and Family Services to enhance services to the most vulnerable and at-risk persons in our society. Number seven, $1 million for increased support services to the judiciary and legal aid. Number eight, $0.4 million for the implementation of various public sector reforms under the umbrella of Project Future. Number nine, $0.5 million for the implementation of a conditional release program to better enable prisoners to successfully reintegrate into society as productive citizens following the release from incarceration. And number 10, $0.3 million for the creation of an Office of Public Ombudsman. The government is very aware of the potential impact that increased operating expenses can have on the overall financial performance, Madam Speaker. Accordingly, we have limited increases to the above priority areas in order to achieve positive long-term benefits that support economic growth, enhance security, improved quality of life, and improved efficiency in the delivery of public services. The major components of the 2016-17 forecast operating expenses, as shown in the financial statements, are: personnel costs are budgeted at $402.3 million and include funding for additional staff to deliver the initiatives included in the budget that I just spoke of. Supplies and consumables are budgeted to be $142.3 million and include additional expenditure for the maintenance of public buildings and parks and supplies for new programs. Outputs from non-governmental output suppliers are budgeted at $34.4 million, the major items being $17.2 million for tertiary medical care at various overseas and local providers for uninsured, underinsured, or indigent persons, $4 million for legal aid services, $2.9 million for rental accommodation for persons in need, $2.3 million for primary and secondary education by private schools, and $2.1 million for the care of the indigent, elderly, and disabled persons. Outputs from statutory authorities and government companies are budgeted to be $152.6 million during the 2016-17 fiscal year and will be used to purchase various services, the major ones being $44.6 million from the Health Services Authority for the provision of various medical services to the community, $42.9 million the Cayman Islands National Insurance Company, health insurance for civil service, retirees, seamen, and veterans. $24.7 million for Cayman Airways Limited to provide airlift to the Cayman Islands from strategic tourism markets and between the Cayman Islands. $20.8 million to the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority for the regulation of the financial services sector of our economy. Madam Speaker, transfer payments are budgeted to be $48.9 million. The major items in this category are $15.9 million for local and overseas scholarships, $11.7 million for poor relief payments and vouchers, $9 million for ex gratia payments to seamen, and $2.3 million for employment initiatives. With respect to financing expenses, they are budgeted to be $38.9 million and covers the interest payments associated with the portfolio of core government debt, which is scheduled to decline during the 2016-17 year by $52.3 million from $503.4 million to $451.1 million. Madam Speaker, depreciation is budgeted to be $39.67 million. Turning to capital investments, Madam Speaker, the government is committed to making sound capital investments which will enhance the country's infrastructure and strengthen opportunities for long-term economic growth. These investments are being made only after thorough analysis to determine their appropriateness, cost-effectiveness, and sustainability, while also following all of the best practice procurement processes set out in the PMFL. For the 2016-17 fiscal year, the government intends to make investments totaling $103.3 million without any new long-term borrowings. The planned capital investments will be funded entirely from existing resources, that is, cash generated from operating activities and surplus cash reserves. $68.1 million will be invested in core government assets, the major investments in this category being $7.9 million for the continued development of the new John Gray High School, $6.9 million for the revitalization of Central Georgetown, $6.5 million for improved solid waste handling facilities, $6 million for the purchase of lands for national environmental conservation purposes. This item will be funded by a withdrawal from the Environmental Protection Fund, Madam Speaker. $1 million for enhanced cybersecurity for the government's information technology infrastructure, $3.4 million for upgrades to the road network, $2.5 million for a residential mental health facility, $1.5 million for a household recycling center, and $0.5 million for the ongoing development of the cruise berthing project. A total of $35.2 million will be invested in SAGCs to fund debt service obligations, operating losses, and various capital projects. The major investments in this category include $12.7 million to the Cayman Turtle Farm 1983 Limited to fund debt servicing and operational losses. $7.7 million to Cayman Airways Limited to fund debt servicing obligations. $7.5 million to the Cayman Islands Airport Authority to fund the redevelopment and expansion of the passenger terminal at the Owen Roberts International Airport. $3.4 million to the National Housing Development Trust to fund debt service obligations. $2 million to the Cayman Islands Development Bank to fund debt servicing obligations, and $1.6 million to the Health Services Authority to fund the purchase of various medical equipment and upgrades to facilities. With respect to cash and debt management, in 2016-17, the government will continue to focus on cash and debt management while also proactively managing our long-term liabilities. It is critical that we continue with this strategy, not just from the perspective of the FFR compliance, but because it is prudent and wise, Madam Speaker. We need to make certain that we build a firm foundation for truly sustainable long-term financial stability, enabling the country to provide high-quality public services to future generations of Caymanians. We have been handed a rich legacy by our forefathers, and today, as guardians, we must act responsibly for future generations of Caymanians. During the 2016-17 year, there will be no new borrowing, and the entire public sector debt balance will decline by $70.3 million to $523.1 million, resulting in a debt to GDP ratio of 17.8 for the entire public sector. This is a significant improvement over the 27.2% that existed in 2012-13. Long-term liability management, Madam Speaker. The government has been a leader in the Cayman Islands in terms of being a responsible employer and offering its employees pension and post-retirement health care benefits. These benefits come at a cost, but they help to ensure that thousands of persons have valuable financial and health care benefits to sustain them in their twilight years. The 2016-17 budget provides clear information about these two significant liabilities and the plans and strategies in place to manage them over the long term. The government has always met its expenses associated with the provision of these benefits. With respect to pensions, there are 3 established pension plans for the government, Madam Speaker: the Public Service Pension Plan, the Parliamentarians Pension Plan, and the Judiciary Pension Plan to provide pension benefits to its employees. The government continues to make contributions to the pension plans on a monthly basis. The 2016-17 budget includes approximately $388.3 million of pension liability based on an actuarial accounting valuation report as at the 30th of June 2015, and estimated pension expenditure of $42.9 million. Sorry, my apologies, Madam Speaker, $49.2 million. The forecast also includes an additional cash contribution to the Public Service Pension Fund of $15 million in 16-17, which directly reduces the pension liability. An accounting valuation, Madam Speaker, is required by the International Public Sector Accounting Standards, IPSAS, number 25, employee benefits. An accounting valuation report is only a snapshot of a plan's estimated financial condition at a particular point in time. It does not predict the plan's future financial condition or its ability to pay benefits in the future, and does not provide any guarantee of future financial soundness of the plan. The underlying principle of this requirement is to recognize the cost of providing employee benefits in the period in which the benefits are earned by the employee rather than when it is paid or becomes payable. With respect to post-retirement health care benefits, Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands government provides post-retirement health care benefits to current pensioners, seamen and veterans, and future civil service retirees. Civil servants are required to complete a minimum of 10 years in service and to also retire from the civil service in order to obtain such health care benefits in the future, Madam Speaker. IPSAS 25 requires the accounting and disclosure by public entities for employee benefits inclusive of post-retirement health care benefits. IPSAS 25 does not require the government to actually fund these benefits, but to report the future cost of benefits already earned by current and past employees and to assign a yearly budget expense to take account of the promised and actual benefits associated with each year's service. These amounts are to be reported in the Statement of Financial Position and Financial Performance. Each year's cost will then add to the health care obligation. The results of an IPSAS 25 healthcare liability actuarial valuation completed in September 2014 by actuaries estimated the post-retirement healthcare obligation as at 30th June 2014 to be $1.2 billion, with the post-retirement medical expense totaling $117 million for the year ended 30th June 2014. The government currently operates on a pay-as-you-go basis in which healthcare costs for retirees are included as operating expenditure each budget. This method of managing post-retirement healthcare liability is similar to that practiced by many other jurisdictions around the world. The 2016-17 budget includes $42.9 million of expenditure for providing health care benefits to current pensioners, seamen, and veterans. This amount represents 4.9% of government's overall operating expenditure budget. While the health care liability over the long term appears to be significant, the actual cost of covering the health care on an annual basis, despite continually increasing, has proven to be manageable and should not be compared to a bullet bond that is due and payable all at once. Nevertheless, the government is committed to reducing the cost of health care, which is anticipated to substantially reduce the growing liability. Additionally, legislative changes have been made recently to increase the retirement age from 60 to 65. This increase in retirement age will also impact the health care liability calculation. A new actuarial valuation will be commissioned in the near future, which will take these changes into consideration. The 2016-17 Budget Plan and Estimates document includes the details of the 30th June 2014 valuation on post-retirement health care in the notes to the financial statements, providing transparency with respect to the information currently available. With respect to compliance with the principles of responsible financial management set out in the Public Management and Finance Law and the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility, the 2016-17 budget forecasts the following levels of compliance with the principles. Number one, net operating position should be positive. Core government's revenues should be greater than its expenses. For 2016-17, compliance is achieved as the government forecasted revenue of $908.5 million is $46.1 million greater than its forecast operating expenses of $862.4 million. Number two, net worth should be positive. Core government's assets less its liabilities should be positive. At the end of the 2016-17 fiscal year, the government's assets are forecast to exceed its liabilities by approximately $1.2 billion. Number 3, debt service. That is the annual payment of interest and principal related to all public sector borrowing commitments should be no more than 10% of core government's revenue. The government is forecasting a debt servicing ratio of 9.8% for 2016-17. Number 4, net debt. The total debt of core government plus the weighted average debt balance of public authorities less core government's liquid assets should be no more than 80% of core government's revenue for the fiscal year. For 2016-17, the net debt ratio is forecast to be 34.3%, Madam Speaker. Number 5, cash reserves. The unrestricted cash reserves operating bank account plus general reserves fund of the core government, measured at the lowest point in the fiscal year, should be sufficient to cover 90 days of core government's estimated operating expenditure. For 2016-17, the government is forecast to have sufficient cash reserves to cover approximately 154.3 days of operating expenditure at the lowest point during the fiscal period. Madam Speaker, in the coming months, the government intends to hold discussions with the United Kingdom with a view to clarifying the interpretations of some of the FFR ratio requirements. For example, as it is written currently, any repayment of debt during a year increases the debt service ratio, thereby effectively penalizing the government for acting prudently and paying down debt. We do not believe that one-off debt repayments should count against compliance with the FFR. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the preparation of the government's budget is an enormous undertaking, and this year would not have been possible without the hard work and commitment of many, and I wish to thank the Honourable Minister for Overseas Territories, Mr. James Duddridge of the United Kingdom's Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and his team for their swift approval of the 2016-17 budget. We formally submitted the budget to the FCO on the 18th of May 2016 and received approval on the 25th of May 2017. I also wish to thank Her Excellency the Governor, the Honourable Premier, Cabinet Ministers, official members of Cabinet, councillors, chief officers, and their staff. I especially wish to thank the team within the Ministry of Finance for their excellent work and commitment to secure Cayman's future. Madam Speaker, it has been both an honor and a privilege to present this budget today. I now humbly commend the appropriation July 2016 to December 2017 Bill 2016 to this Honourable House and ask all members for their support to the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Motion for the deferral of the debate on the budget address.
Recognize Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that the debate on the budget address be deferred until Wednesday, 1st June 2016.
The question is, be it resolved that the debate on the budget address be deferred until Wednesday, 1st of June, 2016. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The motion is carried.
Motion for the throne speech, the policy statement and the budget address to be debated simultaneously.
I once again recognize the Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move the following motion. Be it resolved that the throne speech, the policy statement, and the budget address be debated simultaneously on Wednesday, 1st June 2016.
The question is, be it resolved that the throne speech, the policy statement, and the budget address be debated simultaneously on Wednesday, 1st of June, 2016. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. Motion is carried.
Motion for the adjournment.
Recognize the Honourable Premier for the motion for the adjournment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this Honourable House do stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 1st of June.
The question is that this Honourable House, I recognize the member from Easton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wonder if the Premier can tell us what the government's intent is with regards to trying to get this budget approved and completed by well, long in advance of the 30th of June for its implementation on the 1st because of the gazettal processes and the likes. What is the government intent, if you could expand on what's the government intent on going forward over the next month or 3 weeks? Because we received notification that we were going to work until 7 at night. Is it also the government intent to work on Tuesdays as well, instead of just the 4 days, or over the weekends, whichever the case may be, if the Premier could expand on that so that we would be better informed moving forward in the next 3 weeks.
Honourable Premier, the member is seeking for elucidation on the government's plan to manage its budget prior to July 1st.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it was precisely because of concerns about the length of time it normally takes to get the speeches through, as well as the scrutiny by Finance Committee, that I asked the clerk to indicate to members that we would begin by working late. I believe that if we work until 7 from the outset, we may avert the need to work into the wee hours of the morning, as has been the case in the past. Depending on the progress we make, we may have to resort to more extreme measures, but I hope not. And so, starting this week, obviously, tomorrow is normally Cabinet Day in any event, but members of the House will have the opportunity to start preparing for their debate. There are 19 members to speak, usually, because the official members speak as well. And I think that if we work until 7, we should be able to get through the debates. I hope, if not by the end of this week, by early next week. I am also asking for members, members of the opposition who have private members' motions to agree to what has been the convention, certainly for the 16 years that I have, or 15 years that I have been here, of during the budget meeting, we defer private members' motions until the conclusion of Finance Committee. That will give us that additional day, Thursday, to get through the business of, or this business, the budget business. So I think we'll take this week on the basis that we work until 7, and we see what progress we make. And then next week, if necessary, with the agreement of Business Committee and members, we can perhaps make some other adjustments.
Member from Easton, was it not sufficiently explained?
Well, Madam Speaker, the Premier is asking us to give up over Thursdays, and I am going to ask him if he can ensure that the government is here at 10 o'clock in the morning, each morning.
Members know that standing order sets out the procedure of the order of the business. If members cannot deal with that with consent, as would be the desirable position, then a motion is put to suspend that particular standing order. I now put the question that the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. the first day of June. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. The ayes have it. The House now stands adjourned until 10 a.m. the 1st of June.